It's episode 100! Woo!
Snake Bros. Whoops. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau, which we've been talking to Randall Carlson about plateaus. Learned some stuff about our plateau. So we got a great show for you guys. We're going to, this is the episode where we're going to basically give you the rundown of what happened at Contact at the Cabin. We're going to give you all of our impressions and everything like that. But first, let me introduce, as always, our good friend and longhead, Mr. Brett England, the Watcher from deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space. Hey, buddy, what's going on up there in space with your crickets? Crickets?
Just listening to my echo.
You got an echo? And some crickets. Space crickets?
Funny thing, the crickets don't echo.
Yeah, we got technical difficulties on the Watcher's end, which is been a
That's
standard.
what I get for playing with my sound settings.
Yeah. Well, and it's just it's the state of the technology right now. Talking to space is hard.
Yeah,
I'd really,
what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I'd really like Google to fix their frickin' space communications
Yeah.
setup.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to talk to Elon Musk. Maybe he's got a better way for us to talk to the Watcher.
Yeah.
He can send him SpaceX cubes or something.
It'll involve tubes.
Yeah. Tube communications. All right. As always, we have space weather news from spaceweather.com. Low latitude noctilucent clouds, the record-setting outburst of June 8th and 9th, has subsided, but low latitude observers continue to report noctilucent clouds. The latest sightings come from Ohio and Indiana on June 11th. Because noctilucent clouds are mostly unpredictable, we can't say when the next outburst might occur. Advice: keep an eye on the western horizon 30 to 60 minutes after sunset. If you see electric blue ripples in the twilight, you might have caught a noctilucent cloud. Also, Sprite storms over China. Every night, the Chinese Meteor Monitoring Organization, which is CMMO, runs an automated camera in Shandong province, monitoring meteor activity above the Yellow Sea. On June 9th, meteors were the least of what the optics recorded. It's crazy, says Wang Li of the CMMO. We picked up a spectacular outbreak of red sprites. Our cameras caught the sprites flashing alongside a number of meteors, said Li. I can't express words of our amazement. The image above stacks all of the meteors and sprites captured during the several-hour storm. There are many overlapping events. So basically they had a bunch of red sprites and then like meteors flashing across them.
Whoa, that's crazy. What date was that?
That was June 9th. Sprites are an exotic form of lightning. Unlike normal lightning bolts, which zigzag down to the ground, sprites go upwards from the storm clouds to the stratosphere. Our cameras caught the sprites flashing alongside a number of meteors. Okay, so that's a repeat of what he said. This type of sprite is a jellyfish with a halo from which short, bright elements grow down nicely branched tentacles, says lightning scientist Oscar van der Velde of the Technical University of Catalonia, Spain. These are produced by stronger, more impulsive lightning strikes. Solar minimum may be boosting sprites. During this phase of the solar cycle, cosmic rays from deep space penetrate the sun's weakening magnetic defenses and enter Earth's atmosphere in greater numbers than usual. Some researchers believe that cosmic rays may provide the ionizing spark that triggers many sprites. If so, stay tuned for more as solar minimum deepens.
Wow.
Spaceweather.com.
That's pretty cool. I did not know about sprites.
Spaceweather.com, not spaceweathernews.com, which the Space Weather News guy is awesome, but he posts videos, and I can't read those on the show. So,
yeah.
what you got?
I was going to turn off my phone calling
He's turning on no.
Yeah. I'm using my fantastic No app, which just any call that tries to come in No.
No. Also, solar wind speed 407.6 kilometers per second, and the density is 5.9 protons per cubic centimeter.
I got to remember those numbers because every time you say it, I'm like, is it
What does
more
that mean?
or less?
Yeah, so the last one I read on the snake bites, the proton density was like 4.9 or 5.
Okay,
and now, so it's gone up a little
It's gone up a point.
Yeah. Yeah.
One proton.
Right. 1 proton per cubic centimeter density rise.
Yeah, I can tell. My tentacles are picking it up. Things are getting better. So this is I got a story here that actually has significance to our trip.
Oh, cool.
Men
Oh, cool.
film glowing snake-like UFO in sky before chasing it down as it disappears.
Ah.
So, well, I'll just read the story and then tell the other story. Men recording glowing UFO in the sky before chasing it down as it disappears into nowhere. Bizarre footage emerged of a mysterious snake-like UFO glowing over a desert in the U.S. Cody Kennedy was driving with friends in 29 Palms in California when he spotted something slithering through the sky. The 31-year-old, who had hoped to capture some reptiles for his animal-themed YouTube channel, said, "Me and a couple of friends were driving around the desert looking for rattlesnakes. In the desert at night, rattlesnakes will come up onto the roads while they are looking for food and mates, and I like to drive around looking for them." But he and his friends were left baffled when they saw a moving bright, long bar in the sky on their way back. He thought someone was shining a light on the bottom of a flag, but the light was too high to have been coming from the ground. His video footage shows the UFO resembling a worm squirming in the night sky, illuminating in white, but with patches of black rippling along its body.
Oh, wow.
So, watcher, you should try to find this. Cody Kennedy, snake-like UFO. See if you can find that video and see when he posted it or when they saw it, what date it was.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we were at Contact at the Cabin, I guess it was like the last night. It was
Yeah.
Sunday night or...
Yeah, it was seen twice. Two
Well,
nights in a row.
Okay, I guess it was Sunday night. When did we leave? Monday?
Yeah.
Okay, so then...
Saturday and Sunday night.
Saturday night, some guys out on the porch saw this, and they described it basically the same way that it's being described in this story. And Russ was calling it a sky worm. Or somebody was.
Yeah. Freaking sky worms. Sky snakes.
And then Archer saw something else that was sort of similar to what they said they saw.
Well, first he said he saw a bar. They saw a bar of light appear, and then later they saw the sky snake come by.
Yeah.
And then Archer sort of, when he got home, he did some research and decided that it was possible.
himself.
Yeah, he skirped over it. He said it was possible that was the SpaceX communications array that was released, a whole bunch of little satellites in a row that were released, like a whole set of them, and they were sort of following each other. But I don't know.
But
if
it wouldn't have happened on two nights in a row.
And they shouldn't be doing this snake motion either.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to find out what date that was, because I guess, or what date that these guys, the rattlesnake guys,
Yeah.
saw it. It doesn't say in the news story, but there's a picture of it.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
So yeah,
So yeah.
that's all I got. I already went through my news stories on the snake bites.
Well, I have one from Mysterious Universe. Massive metallic anomaly discovered on the far side of the moon. Something strange has just been detected below the surface of the moon. Scientists at Baylor University have analyzed data gathered from NASA's 2011-2012 GRAIL mission. GRAIL.
Right.
And have found that a huge, dense mass of metal lies just under the surface of the moon's south pole. The Aitken Basin, one of the largest known craters in the solar system. While it is still somewhat unknown where the metallic mass could have come from, the researchers believe it's likely the remnants of a huge metal asteroid which impacted the moon and formed the crater itself. The South Pole, Aitken Basin, lies on the far side of the moon and measures over 2,500 kilometers or 1,600 miles at its widest point.
Wow.
And it is about 8 miles deep, it says. The mass of the metallic deposit in the basin is weighed... Whoops. has weighed down the surface of the crater by more than half a mile and appears to be several miles deep. Yeah, okay. Topographic maps of the South Pole. Yeah, so imagine taking a pile of metal 5 times larger than the big island of Hawaii and burying it underground. That's roughly how much an unexpected mass we detected, lead author Peter B. James said in a press release. James and colleagues have published a study of the moon's metal mass in which they argue that plausible sources for this anomaly include metal from the core of a differentiated impactor or oxides from the last stage of magma ocean crystallization. While the oxidation of magma remains a possibility, most of the data gathered about the mass supports the theory that an iron and nickel-rich asteroid struck the far side of the moon about 4 billion years ago.
Isn't that like...
Right. That's about how old the Earth is, so it's a little weird. Creating the crater and leaving its metals embedded in the moon's mantle. Thus, the basin and this metallic mass offer the perfect opportunity to study the effects of ancient catastrophic impacts. Last month, an international team of scientists also using GRAIL published a study claiming that the moon's curious asymmetries could have been caused by a collision with a dwarf planet. The crust of the far side of the moon is much thicker than on the near side. The composition of the two sides are vastly different, and scientists still aren't sure why. Could this metallic mass be the long-dead core of a dwarf planet?
Ah, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, so, the near side of the moon, most of its crust has been blasted away. It's much thicker on the other side, and, but SitchinWasWrong.com.
Yeah, so the Watcher says... Best date he can find is last month.
Right.
Which was May. So
yeah.
And that's when we were at Contact at the Cabin.
That's right.
Good enough. And they were in California. We were in Colorado.
It's kind of close. They both start with a C.
It's about the same distance from the sky.
All right, we got a whole bunch of listener communication here. First of all, I want to say that we're not able to read everything you guys send us on the show because we're getting more and more. And I just want to say I appreciate everything anyone says, whether it's in the comments, whether it's part of the, when people comment when they donate, or when people comment when they're rating us, or when people just comment on the website, or we get emails. I read them all. And thank you guys so much for the communications. I really dig all of it. But I just want to say, just because we don't read your communication on the show does not mean that I didn't read it. I read them all. We read them all. So thank you so much for that. Part of this, the reason for this podcast was to join the conversation, and you guys are communicating with us, and it's freaking awesome. Yeah. So
I don't read them all, but thanks.
I read them all.
I still really care about it. I have other duties.
Yeah. So here's an email. Topic suggestions from a snake bro. First of all, I just want to say that I really enjoy the podcast. I have a job where I work out of my truck most of the day, and your show not only entertains me, but makes the day go by so much faster. I've been cherry-picking my way through your previous shows, and I would say I'm a fair part of the way through the catalog. I tend to find myself drawn to the ancient civilization and distant past topics more than the theories about physics and such, as I am kind of short, and they go over my tiny head. So correct me if I am wrong, but I believe the way you guys look at the distant past is more about an advanced ancient worldwide civilization and less about aliens being the answer for anything we cannot fathom or don't understand. For the most part, my views and also interests align with what I believe to be yours in this area. I mean, who doesn't love the mystery of impossible blocks? Shamir! A topic that I find interesting and I don't believe you guys have covered, point me in the right direction if you have, is Mars and all of the stories and anomalies that point to some culture either visiting or occupying it in the distant past. I am sure you are aware that there are even people who believe that humans may have originated on Mars. I would love to hear you guys go through this topic, as I am sure you will bring up some excellent snake thoughts that I have neither heard nor considered. One of my other favorite things is when you, not necessarily on purpose, discuss some of the more asinine theories out there, i.e. flat earth theory. I would love to hear you guys take a show and go through them and give your perspective on several of the more popular but also terrible theories out there. I assume it would be quite entertaining. Thanks for what you guys do, and I'll look forward to what's to come. Snakes! P.S. The music is pretty great. Only one or two of them suck. Also, tell the Watcher he is somewhat appreciated as well. Your non-contributing snake bro from Ohio, Kyle.
His name's Kyle?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, bro?
That's an awesome
I'm
email,
really
man.
sad you don't like my physics discussions.
He said they go over his tiny head because he's short.
Damn it. There's one theory that I'd really like to smash, and that's triangle Earth. It's total bullshit.
Thanks so much for the email, man. That one really gave us a good laugh. That was awesome. Let's see. What else do I got here?
And the watcher is appreciating that he is appreciated.
From the Grand Watcher, from episode 98, which was the Contact at the Cabin episode we did, the episode where we recorded there.
We were at the
Yeah, this is his comment. Excuse my language, but in blanking credible. End of email. Thanks, Grand Watcher. Really appreciate that since we were getting untold buckets of crap from some people about that episode. So really appreciate the support there.
Stop that leg shaking.
Oh, sorry. I drank too much coffee.
I can hear the bass in my headphones. And I am, yeah.
From Henry Hablack, check this out. Made a Younger Dryas shirt. Hope you guys are having a great time at the cabin. I'm going to sign up for next year. Still haven't forgotten I said I'd make something for you guys. Just been crazy busy. Anyway, keep killing it. And he sends us a picture of his Younger Dryas shirt that he designed. It's downloading. It's got pyramids. It's got petroglyphs, stars, comet. I'm guessing because it still hasn't loaded. Wow.
Well, wait, we got a package here.
Yeah, I know we got 1-up boxes, and I think it is from Henry. But anyway, I just wanted to say he made a Younger Dryas T-shirt. It's yellow and it's got kick-ass designs on it. You know, it's got long heads, aliens. Go ahead. Kyle's opening the 1-up box here.
This is a great.
Sent to Snake Bros. We were wondering, you know, if what the postage people are thinking. Like, who are Snake Bros?
Whoa,
Dude.
all right. Whoop.
Coasters. Man.
Wow, there's a bunch of stuff in here.
Oh, wow.
Oh, tattoos.
Tattoos. God, look at this shirt. That's freaking awesome.
Serpents.
Yeah, he sent us a snake shirt. Long sleeve, white with a kick-ass design on it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's a patch.
Yeah. Coffin-shaped burial patch.
Dude, this.
And he's a longhead with a spiral. Look at that skull.
Yeah.
All right.
Whoa. More stuff.
Yeah, there's so much stuff in this.
Dude, this is awesome. I'm assuming this is all your artwork.
Yeah, it looks like his artwork for sure. Man,
it's freaking cool.
Yeah, we'll have to take pictures of this stuff and
Yeah.
post it in the show notes. I'm guessing this is from Henry. There's
another T-shirt.
Oh, wow.
Some dude with some
Yeah,
kundalinis
some
and
Kundalini
some...
meditation under the sun and the stars.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah. And the moon down there.
Man, awesome. Thank you,
so
man.
a bunch, what is that? It's like a portfolio of artwork?
Yeah, this is a bunch of art.
Yeah, so he sent us a book with a bunch of artwork. He sent us like patches, coasters. Man, dude, these are awesome. Oh, these are like arrowheads, dude.
Oh, whoa. Hold up.
Hold up.
Wait, these are... Oh, yeah, they are. Dracos.
Dragons.
These look like... Almost like
That's
tarot cards.
Baphomet. Oh, yeah. Fox.
Yeah, these are large...
Look at the teeth.
What
Wow.
size is this?
That's like an A3 page.
Dude, these are really cool, man.
Yeah.
Very much esoteric stuff in these.
Wow. Thank you so much, man. We'll hang some of this stuff up in the Tangent Cube.
Heck yeah.
Some of it will go in the tower with me. Take this up to the tower. Yeah, these are like cards.
All right, sorry you guys can't see all this.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Trying to describe what we got here. It's very, very intricate artwork. Cool. Man, look at this. Hinge.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, bro.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Really cool.
Got a box from
Got a box from
Brad Young.
hats.
Hats. Thanks, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's White Hat Day.
White Hat Day. We're White Hat.
Appreciate
We're White
that.
Hat podcaster. Whoa, he's hitting the buttons of the.
Sorry about that. Get this out of my lap. Appreciate the 1-up boxes.
Yeah. That's
You guys
right.
are
1-up
awesome.
boxes. Okay, let's see. What else do I got here?
More comments?
Yeah, I do have more comments. Just need to
See,
find
that's the thing. We get busy doing interviews, and then
we get
going
backed
on
up.
trips, and we're backed up with so much user.
Right, which is why
communications.
I wanted to take the time to do this. So we got some great stuff on Apple Podcast reviews here. This one, I think I mentioned this one before, but this is from Sitarzan. 5 stars. Awesome. This is hands down the best podcast I've found yet. Shamir for the win. Great
Thanks.
comment there. Next one from What's Really Going On? I cherry picked this as a great podcast. This might be the same guy whose email I read because he's talking about cherry picking. Keep doing what you guys do, and the watcher can keep watching.
Another watcher comment. Watcher.
Right. From Joan Ivy, 78. This is a top 5 podcast. This is a really great podcast shining light on esoteric human origins and other things and snakes. Anyway, very intelligent dudes talking about stuff that they always put the snakes are in all caps. Very intelligent dudes talking about stuff that only enlarge your brain and get the creative juices flowing. Also, I know that there are more than 30 people listening, so why are there only 30 reviews? People, come on, don't be lazy. Write a review if you like the show. Jesus. Johnson.
Is that what he said?
No, there's no Johnson in there. That's what it should be. From Scott Baldwin, worth every second. I am yet another who discovered the Brothers of the Serpent podcast through a query of Randall Carlson. Those interviews are always informative, and I have discovered so many more subjects working through the back catalog of their material. Congratulations, guys, and best of luck moving forward. Great, informative podcast with varied and worthwhile subject matter. Man, thanks, buddy.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to get that guy on the show and talk rock and roll. Do a rock and roll show with old Baldwin, man. He's he does the live mixes for huge acts all over the world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know that.
Scotty Baldwin. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see.
Rock and roll, man.
Rock and roll. This is from Young Cat Food. Hooked on the show. Love those Serptards. I think he's talking about you, buddy. You are the resident Serptard.
I am. Pretty good at serp derping stuff,
The
too.
Serpent Skirptard. Serptard. All right. One other thing that I got from the website, real quick here. This is real short. This is from episode 99, the one we did with Soraya from Where Did the Road Go? This is a great comment. It says, and it's from Unknown, so I don't know who it was, but it says, what happens when 2 excellent podcasts collide? This episode. Thanks, whoever that was.
Oh, man. Oh, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Yep, it's got a lot of warm and fuzzies.
It's the first time I've ever felt fuzz underneath my scales. But I just want to say I think it's really hilarious how all these people that we don't know, all of you lovable listeners out there, just snap right into the whole humor
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, exactly.
Like all the Johnson comments and the snake, the snakes in all caps. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's like, dude, these people get it.
yeah,
It's a great feeling.
it is.
So thank you guys so much for that.
Yeah.
And just your humor is great.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
really appreciate it.
The comments and the emails, like even when they're real serious, there's always something in there that just makes me crack up because it's like that. It's almost like we're drawing this people to ourselves that have the same sense of humor as we do. Obviously, if you hated our sense of humor, you wouldn't listen. Right? So they all get it, and it's great. You guys are awesome. So one other thing I need to say. And this is about the feed. So this is like more technical sort of inside baseball, but I wanted everybody to understand what's going on. We've gotten to the point now, like this is episode 100, but we have like 114 things posted in the feed, actually. Like even though this is only up, because we've got all the Contact Cabin conferences we posted, plus some snake bites. So the point is that we've gotten to the point now where we're having to archive stuff, or things are being archived. So in your feed, you're not going to be able to roll all the way back to episode 2. Okay. And that's just a function of how the feed works. For the last couple of weeks, FeedBurner's been giving me shit. Every time I tried to post something, it would complain. And I finally figured out that it's because FeedBurner has so like when you have an, I don't probably need to explain all this, but it's sort of interesting. When you have an RSS feed, what happens is the whatever the feed is generated by makes a big text file. Okay. And the text file just has a bunch of code that describes to any feed reader that you're using where all the stuff is, right? So the code, it doesn't include the pictures. It just has a little code to find the picture, right? It doesn't include the size of the file of the audio because obviously our audio files are big. It just has a little piece of code. Here's where to get it, right? So in the end, our feed is a big text file. And the more we've posted shows, that adds to the text file. So it grows and grows. Okay. And FeedBurner has a limit on the size of that XML file, okay?
Jerks.
Yeah, it just says it can't be bigger than this, right? So what happened was I was running up against that max size of the XML file. So what I had to do is go in and change some code in the FeedBurner stuff to basically tell it only look for the last 100 objects, okay? So what that means is like as we post new shows, old ones are going to be disappearing from the feed, but they're still available. They're just archived on the website, okay? So that's what I needed to say. Like, so basically now when you look at the feed, the last one, the earliest one you can find is like episode 14 or 15. When we post this show, it'll go up to 16, so on and so forth. But those shows are still available.
Have no fear.
Right. The shows are still available. You just have to go to brothersoftheserpent.com and you can find them in the, there's a whole ordered by date set up down there at the very bottom on the right where you can basically find all of the posts we've made, and they're in chronological order, so you can find the oldest shows there. Or if you just look it up, Brothers of the Serpent episode 2, it'll come up on Google. But it will not be in your podcast app anymore because the feed no longer shows up because we use FeedBurner and they have a max size. So I just wanted to explain that. So
maybe we'll complain to FeedBurner.
Yeah, and I was looking at maybe changing something. I don't know if that's a standard. You know, it may be standard across all feed services that like this is the max size of the file, or maybe not. So I'll try to figure it out. But I know that every other show that I love, they also have archive shows. You can't find their earliest shows right. You just have to archive your shows. You're not going to, if you've published freaking 500 shows, you're not going to have a list of 500 shows. You scroll back and you're going to get to 300 and something. And then before that, you need to go to their website and find the archives. So we now have an archive is what
We're building a library.
That's right.
A library of snakes.
Right. So early on in the podcast, when we first started, I didn't have any code telling FeedBurner what to do in this instance because I didn't know about it. And then people were complaining like, hey, man, there's a few episodes that have just disappeared when we got up into 30s or 40s or something like that. And I went and looked and found out, I haven't told FeedBurner how many things it should look for. And I found out that the max number you could put in there was 500. So I just put in 500. I was like, sweet. Like by the time we get up to 500, like if we actually ever publish 500 shows, then I'll figure something out. That's going to be a long time from now and I can just forget about it. And then of course we got up to 100 and then ran into the max XML file size. So I had to change it.
Lame.
From 500 to 100. So now it only looks.
Come on, who puts limits on text files anymore?
I know. Like storage space is almost infinite. Why can I only use 10K? Come on, guy. Come on, guy. And I don't even know how much longer FeedBurner is going to be around. So FeedBurner may be being phased out by Google. It's free, so I can't complain. Right.
Yeah. We love you, FeedBurner.
Yeah. And Blogger is the way that Blogger is what I use to generate the feed. So Blogger is the one that creates the file. Right. So Blogger will make as big a file as necessary. Like it's just that FeedBurner is like, no, that file's too big. I won't read it anymore. So then it wouldn't update.
That's mean, man.
Yeah. So I had to change it.
But it's free.
Yeah. And Blogger is also free. Yeah. The only thing that we have that's not free is our hosting. We pay a lot of money for that, and it's ours. Well, I mean, we don't have a server, but it's not associated with any podcasting service. Most people who do podcasts now use a podcasting hosting service. That's not what we're doing. So, yeah, we would have to pay for a whole separate, and we already have this, so we might as well use it. So.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'd like to know which songs suck.
yeah. Hey, Kyle, which of Kyle's songs suck?
I'm gonna have to start like you're gonna have to tell me like, okay, it was episode 47, third break.
I think that his point, the way that I took it, was that like, because I've had this too, like a lot of podcasts you listen to, and like every once in a while there's a song that they play that you're like, that's badass, but most of the time you're like, meh. And he's like, only one or two of you guys' songs sucks. Like every other song is badass. Is what he was actually saying. I knew that you were going to focus on which ones suck. What do you mean? All of my songs are awesome.
No, because I actually think, well, there's definitely one of them that I think sucks. It's the first techno song I ever made.
Oh.
And it's in there, and sometimes I throw it in there.
Just a piece of it.
And
yeah.
I'm just like, this song sucks.
It's probably not that. It's probably one of your newest ones.
Yeah, right?
He doesn't like.
Like, this song. Where did he come up with this crap?
Who's playing that trumpet?
Well, it wasn't me. It was not me.
Yeah, thanks for saying that only a few of the songs suck.
Yeah, buddy. I appreciate that. Go check out $50 Dynasty.
Yeah.
A lot more of those songs suck. But, we're working on that.
Yeah. All right, we're going to come back after the break and start talking about the...
Snakes. Hold up. This is the song. This is the one I don't like. I think this song sucks. Sometimes I use it. I gotta make more,
You're gonna be okay, kid.
Welcome back, Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, episode 100.
That's right. 100.
Contact at the cabin.
Yeah.
Epic trip, people. You gotta go.
So it was a 16-hour drive. We actually stopped at a geological oddity on the way up there. Was that in New Mexico? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
It was only about an hour or two from
right.
Pagosa.
Yeah, we had to drive through Flatbelly Land for most of the trip.
Yeah. Lots of flatbillies out there.
Once we got out of the hills in Texas, it was flat land, and I made the wrong turn at one point, and we got into the Flatbilly ghetto. And Kyle was like, "We need to get out of here. This is Flatbilly Land. I don't like this place." So,
As opposed to hillbillies, they're flatbillies.
They're flatbillies, and those guys are scary. And you can see them because it's flat. They're everywhere.
All of them. Especially when you're on flat Earth. It just never
That's right,
ends.
yeah, flatbillies all over the place. So we got up into New Mexico, and we saw a sign. And I was hoping for this because the last time I drove up to Colorado, the same thing happened. We got up in there, New Mexico, Colorado area, and we're on some like state highway, and there's this turnoff sign, one of those brown signs, and it's like, natural auditorium or whatever. So we went, and it's basically one of the huge sedimentary cliff, and it's caved off, caved. It's like a glacier calving.
Cloven?
So anyway, something fell off the cliff, or maybe it was actually water erosion. I don't know.
I think it was. I think it was sandstone.
Yeah.
And it was the big, like, it kind of looked like if you're a flint napper, it looked like when you take a flake and it makes that little sort of half bowl shape, and there's a little, you can see like right where the fracture began.
Oh, yeah.
It's like another recessed half bowl.
Yeah.
It looked like that from the top of the cliff down.
That's true.
But there was no flake laying in the bottom.
Right.
It was completely gone.
So big water, a lot of water carrying
Probably
something
an eddy.
big that smashed into it and knocked that flake off there.
Well, it could have also been one of those drilled, those vortexes or something that cut some of it.
Maybe. Yeah, yeah. Well, Watcher says there's a reference that everyone will get. Flint napping.
Hey, man.
Everyone knows flint napping.
Hey, look, I know you flint nappers are out there listening because our buddy Clint Beckham told me that some of his Arrowhead digger guys are like, Snake Bros! So, what's up, dudes?
What's up? Yeah, so the 5 of you that will get that reference.
That's why I told you. But, I mean, look, I don't know anything else that looks... Okay, for those of you who don't flint nap, but you hit, like, you know, a piece of glass, like, say you hit a piece of glass, like a glass tabletop on the edge, and it breaks a little
chunk off there.
Round flake off of the top or the bottom of the sheet of glass. It looks the same.
Yeah. So basically, you had sheer cliff faces, and there was a big half bowl, but like think of a bowl standing on its edge, so it's facing you. The bowl part is facing you. So the cliff face had this big round, like somebody had rolled a sphere into it when it was still soft, right? And it made a natural echoey auditorium kind of deal.
Yeah, and the path that led up to it. Once you get there, there's like a bunch of people walking down the path going away, this group of people, and they're talking, and you could hear them like they're right in front of you.
Yeah.
Everything they're saying is coming in, being focused, like echoing off of that bowl shape and focused at the point that you're standing, and it's just like they're right next to you.
Yeah.
It's
And there was a woman there that had a flute, and she started playing it when we were leaving, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
Blew our minds.
Because you could hear the flute from where she was, but then you can also hear the echo, so it was just natural reverb and echo thing. It's really cool. I got a video of it.
Yeah, it was really cool. So once we left there, we got up to the site. We got up to the lodge at about 6 or 6:30, something like that. And it was down. What was it like? You had to go down. I don't know, like 5 miles of dirt road.
Yeah.
And the weather there was interesting because, we're leaving, it's warm or whatever. We get up there and it's cold and everything's wet and there's snow.
Yeah.
And that night, we're all exhausted because we drove, basically, we started driving. Kyle and I left our houses at around midnight. Isn't that right? Isn't that what we did?
Yeah, between 10 and midnight somewhere.
Yeah. Is that right? And we got up to Austin at 2. Yeah.
Picked up the old GMA.
GMA at 2 o'clock. Yeah. So by the time we got there, it was 6 o'clock the next day in the afternoon, and we were
all
just
delirious.
delirious. And then Randall gives a presentation, and we're sitting there like, trying to comprehend what he's saying.
And it was really cool. The presentation was not what I expected. I mean, it was. I don't know. For those of you that listen to the Zoom conferences, like he mentions in there that, we're going to be looking at this Chaco culture and the Pueblo culture, but he didn't really go into detail during the Zoom conferences. And when we get there, he does this whole hour and a half, 2 hour presentation on the various sites and, constructions and whatever of the Puebloans, and how it's very possibly coincidentally connected to the cathedral building period.
Oh, yeah.
Like the time period that these people showed up and started building these, just taking on these massive construction projects at the top of mountains, bringing the stones up, this crazy climb to get up to the top of, say, Chimney Rock, the mountain that range there at the top of where Chimney Rock stands, and they're built this huge thing, like 6 million stones they had to cut.
Yeah,
and
that's just the quote unquote temple thing at the top there. There's
Right.
also all the freaking kivas and pueblos and all the other things that they built all along the ridge.
it's just it's insane. But yeah, that one building, which is the quote unquote temple, which as we discovered, no one really knows what was going on, but there are definite astronomical alignments. They used the 2 pillar towers of Chimney Rock, the aperture between them, where they positioned their quote unquote temple. There's an alignment that happens there every 18.6 years, which is the maximum lunar standstill. So this is all in his first presentation.
Yeah. So the moon orbits the Earth. Its orbital plane is actually aligned it's mostly aligned with the
plane of the
ecliptic, which is the plane of the sun's equator, not the Earth's equator. Right? So you picture the Earth, it's tilted. But but you're looking at the Earth and it's tilted, and we always talk about the Earth having a tilt. Well, what is that tilt in reference to? It's in reference to the sun's axis. Okay, so in this picture of the Earth having a tilted axis, you can always picture the sun in the background with its axis line being straight up and down, perfectly north and south, 0 to 90 degrees or 0 to 180 degrees, whereas the Earth's axis is tilted. So you can imagine with the sun in the background of that picture there, that its axis, there's an equator around it, and that equator goes out in a big disk. Okay, flat solar system goes out on a big disk. The Earth is tilted relative to its axis is tilted relative to that disk, but the moon orbits the Earth. So now put another object in your mind picture here with the sun in the background with a straight up and down axis, Earth in the foreground with its tilted axis. Now put the moon going around the Earth, and you draw its orbital line around the Earth, mostly flat, like in alignment with the sun's equatorial line. With the disk, the imaginary disk coming out from the sun's equatorial line. Now that circle that the moon describes when it orbits around the Earth actually wobbles like a plate rolling around on the floor
it's
after
like
you've dropped
6
it.
degrees or something like that.
5 degrees plus and minus, right? So it rolls around the Earth like this, and that's why so you imagine the Earth's tilted and what the Earth's equator then looks like, and then you draw the moon's orbit around the Earth and then have that sort of rolling around, and that rolling process is a cycle that takes 18 and something years or whatever.
Yeah.
So they were tracking that. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
what it results in on the ground is the rising. Like, say if you took a snapshot of the horizon from the same position every time the full moon rose, right? You would notice over time that the full moon's rising point on the horizon keeps drifting. Right? It drifts farther, say to the left, and then it slows down and seems to not drift at all for quite a long period, possibly two to 3 years. And then it starts drifting back the other direction and stops. But it actually does this in two different respects. There's a maximum and minimum.
right.
Where it goes part of the way and then stops and then comes back to the right and then stops. And then when it goes back to the left, it goes much further than it went the last time.
Yeah.
And stops.
That's
at
the
its
maximum standstill.
Yeah, that would be the maximum standstill where it stops for 3 years and the full moon's rising in the same position. So this is going to occur again in
2022?
2022 or 24, I can't remember.
Yeah, something like that. 24.
Watcher? When is the lunar
When is
maximum
the next
standstill?
maximum standstill?
Anyway, so during the maximum standstill, the full moon rises. If you're standing in this temple thing, and there's like a big round, what they call a kiva there, inside this temple. If it's aligned. Oh wait, is this right?
Yeah. So let's describe.
Some portion of it is aligned with this.
Yeah. So let's just because there's two things we were looking at the whole trip. It was back and forth between these two different things, major things we're looking at. Obviously, Randall Carlson is interested in catastrophic geology, right? Geology that is influenced by catastrophic events. So there was that because we were looking at enormous canyons with sheer walls. The entire place we were in was the part of the Colorado Plateau uplift. Okay, and the whole place had been cut by glaciers. We went and saw glacial moraines, which is where the forward tongue of the glacier stopped before it receded, and it leaves this big mound of stuff. We looked at that stuff. So that kind of thing was all like these glacially cut, like I don't know what they're called, but it's like a canyon, but it was made by a glacier rather than water.
And you can see the sort of sediment lines in the sandstone on the one side of the canyon. And then I don't know how many miles over the other side of the canyon is.
Yeah.
And you can see the
Miles.
same line.
Yeah.
And it's like this all used to be, there was just ground here and you're 1,000 feet above the
Right. Like you
the
could
valley.
the highest peaks and points of these various eroded structures were the ground level at some point, or at least that was the ground. The ground level may have been above that because the erosion starts on top of everything and then starts to work its way down into the. So anyway, Chimney Rock, which is where this place we're talking about is. Chimney Rock itself is a series of ridge lines. And on the most prominent ridge line, which is what we hiked up, on the most prominent ridge line, out at the end of it are two pinnacle rocks. Okay? So this was cool to me. He
And they're
described
really tall.
Yeah, really huge and tall, but they're pinnacles. So there's 3 different geological formations that he talked about: mesas, buttes, and pinnacles.
Yeah.
Right. So his
I
definition.
remember.
Yeah, the whole thing was like being in class too, because after he gets to know everybody, he starts giving another presentation, and then he's like pointing people out and asking, "Do you remember this?" And people are like, I don't remember, man." And somebody else would be like, "Ooh."
Dude, it really was. It was like the whole 10 days was like being at school.
Yeah, but like really cool
freaking
school.
awesome.
Yeah,
Cool school.
Cool school.
We straight up went to school, man.
Yeah.
It was all the conversations with everybody were hilarious, as we talked about before, but also very informative. Everybody, it was really cool to be with a group where everybody was like equally interested in all of this stuff, which is why they were there. So it's like all the conversations ended up going into subjects where we were learning things, sharing knowledge, and then of course we were all learning from Randall.
Right.
But it's like that first presentation showing these astronomical alignments. Okay, there was the maximum lunar standstill. There was also, of course, summer solstice, winter solstice alignments.
We had a joke for the rest of the trip that like mooning somebody was giving them the maximum lunar standstill.
That's right.
You drop trowel and bend over, and that's the maximum lunar standstill.
That's right.
So anyway, pinnacle rock. So mesas are eroded features that are wider than they are tall, right? So a mesa can be as wide as it needs. It basically like, so imagine water's coming through and cutting canyons out of stuff, and you end up with flat areas that are above the canyons, the flat ground above the canyon, and then it's cut off on one side, cut off on this side, and cut off at the canyon edge, and so you have this area of it looks like an uplift, but it's not. It's eroded. It's been eroded down around it by water. So a mesa is one of those that's as much wider than it is tall.
It's area. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
wider than tall.
Yeah, a butte, spelled Butte, has roughly the same width as it is tall. That's a butte. So you see those structures where, it's like box sitting on the ground or whatever, with some scree on the sides. And then a pinnacle is taller than it is wide. And usually when you're looking at a landscape of these things, all 3 of them are present. And for the most part, the tops of all of them, the mesas, the buttes, and the pinnacles, are roughly at the same height.
Elevation, yeah.
Elevation, yeah. Same fucking word.
Sorry. Altitude, elevation,
height. It's just
yeah.
tall.
Height is correct.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just freaking correcting me.
It's the altitude and elevation that I get mixed up sometimes. Like I'll say altitude, which is actually in air.
Yeah,
not
above
on
ground.
the ground.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My bad. I'll cut that out.
No, it's fine. Correct me with a multiple syllable word when I'm using a single syllable word. No, I have no problem with that. It's tall. You're like elevation. I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah. So we're looking at Pinnacle Rock. Basically, Chimney Rock was 2 pinnacles. Okay, and this is the thing. The geology isn't really clear on how this happened. Like, no one's really clear, and it's not.
The
just
whole
random.
area was volcanic, though.
Right. So there's volcanic. There's a huge uplift a long time ago. It used to be under an ocean, and at some point it was under glaciers. There was glacial outwash and melting. No one knows what the actual timeline is, except that obviously the glaciers weren't there.
Was it eroded and then uplifted? Was it uplifted and then eroded?
And we know that erosion happened after the uplift because there were glaciers, and then they melted and flowed through. So
there could have been a big combination of both over a series,
complex series of things. Yeah. So you end up with, so the point is that the ridge line that pointed to or that went along towards Chimney Rock was real long and just happened, so basically you're walking along this ridge line towards Chimney Rock, and when you're looking at them from that perspective, they look close together. Obviously, one is close to you and one is much farther out, but you end up with these 2 structures that are relatively the same elevation at the tops, and you can see between them. There's a narrow passage between them. Now, if you're looking at them from another perspective, they're much farther apart when you're looking at them along the ridge. or looking at them like if you're standing off the ridge and looking towards the whole structure, they're much farther apart. But when you get on the ridge, you're looking down the line of the whole ridge where the pinnacles came from, and so they're close to each other. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's
the aperture between them is real narrow.
right, and that's where they built the quote unquote sun temple thing.
Yeah, and the natural alignment of this entire ridge is towards the maximum lunar standstill.
That's right.
So it's like these people, whoever they were, the Puebloans, the Chacoans, or
Pueblo
whatever,
2 culture or whatever.
they utilized this natural feature for doing science, and and this was shown over and over again. Like when we went, the other site that we went to was called Mesa Verde. So we're on top of a mesa here, and on the mesa itself is 2,000 feet in elevation. The top of the mesa is 2,000 feet in elevation above the valley, the river valley below.
Around it, yeah.
But in the top of the mesa are cut these massive, incredibly deep canyons. I don't know exactly what the depth of those canyons were, but I would just from measuring the canyons at Devil's River when we went on the Devil's River
Probably
trip,
1,000 feet.
they had to be something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
In some
or
places.
more. Yeah.
But I mean, so there was a site called the Sun Temple on Mesa Verde, and it was on a natural, like it was sort of like a peninsula that's sticking out between two canyons, and that peninsula was naturally pointed towards the summer solstice sunrise. So the Sun Temple they built on the point of that. What the hell?
What?
Just lost the word. Anyway, they built it on the end of that peninsula is the word I was looking for. And the wall, it's this big D-shaped structure, and nobody really knows what the total structure would have been because it is basically a ruin. But the exterior wall is basically D-shaped, and the straight side of the structure was aligned with the summer solstice sunrise. So there was a lot of interesting stuff about that. But basically, in Randall's presentations, he was showing interesting things about the geometry of these structures called kivas that are round structures that they built. And most of the time when they could, they excavated the kiva out of the ground. They dug it out of the ground and they put stone masonry. They built it up around the walls, okay, like a retaining wall. And there were these, I don't know what you would call them, but parts that jutted out to the inside of the circles, these stone constructions that they were geometrically aligned, symmetrically aligned around the inside of the circle. And he illustrated how the geometry of this thing, this kiva that was repeated in construction sites all over Mesa Verde, at Chimney Rock, and just all over in the Chacoan culture too, over at Chaco Canyon.
Yeah, the Pueblo culture in general.
Yeah. That the geometry matched that of some of the fundamental geometry that is part of the Gothic cathedrals.
Yeah.
And at the same time, so this culture apparently seems to appear somewhere between 600 and 900 AD, and they do all this building with seemingly no learning phase. I mean, it's just they're all built.
Just shows up. Yeah.
They're all built like they knew what they were doing when they got there.
Yeah.
And they vanish around 1130 AD, which is this timeline lines up with the Gothic cathedrals began being built all over Europe at the same time that these things and the kivas and everything and all this astronomically aligned stuff was being built right here in Colorado in the United States.
Yeah.
And they both vanish at the same time.
So if you picture a kiva, if you're looking down at it, and Randall showed us this image, you got a kiva and you're looking down at it and you got the structure on the inside and it's got these little inserts that are around that are poking in to the inside of the circle. Okay, so if you draw a line across those two inserts and make an X, you end up with it's basically roughly the same as if you have the Earth's axis in one direction and then you have it in the other direction. Right?
Yeah, so if you draw a vertical line dissecting the kiva, and then you draw a line on the left X, the right X line. The vertical line would be center, and the whole.
Yeah, so it shows you. It's basically
your description was better.
Right.
It's really hard to do this.
Yeah. The idea is that the Earth's axis doesn't turn around, but relative to the sun, it does. So what that is showing basically is relative to the sun, that the different angles that the full extent of the angle the axis can be relative to the sun on either side.
Well, it does turn around due to precession.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I think, what he was illustrating too, is that like if you consider the whole, like if you draw the axis and imagine this,
It describe its little circle.
yeah,
Yeah.
that the basically it would the extent, the maximum would be an X shape,
Yeah.
and that's it matches this geometry of the kiva,
Yeah.
which is very interesting.
Yep.
And these same proportions were illustrated over and over in the Gothic cathedrals as well.
Right.
So it's just really interesting. And the other thing is, supposedly whoever these people were, had clear cut the forests all around Chimney Rock and hauled these massive ponderosa pine logs 90 miles away
To Chaco Canyon.
To Chaco
and
Canyon.
to the Canyon of the Ancients. Yeah.
to build all of these structures over there. And we're just like, how in the hell?
They also built a whole bunch of like perfectly straight road. Well, not they would run perfectly straight. They were really wide. They had retaining walls or something, berms on either side of them, and they were really wide. And they would just go up and over all, instead of going like our roads kind of veer around difficult features. Their roads just went straight. And then sometimes they would have a dog leg where it's just like a sharp turn at some point, but they didn't never curve, right? There were no curves. It was like it would go straight and they would have an angle and it would keep going straight and there'd be another angle or whatever. But it was a series of straight lines.
Yeah, so like zigzagging
Yeah.
everywhere.
And they would go up and over. And this is reflected in things like the Nazca lines.
Yeah.
Even the band of holes down there in Peru. It just goes straight across and over like very difficult features in the landscape instead of sort of going around them like any sane person would do. And not sane, but really like it begs to question what was the purpose of these features.
Yeah.
So back to Chimney Rock. Again, put the picture in your mind. You got this long ridge line, and the way the ridge line and then the pinnacles at the end of it are situated, that if you're standing at the right place on the ridge, looking towards the pinnacles, then during the maximum lunar standstill, you will see the moon rise right between the base of right between the two pinnacles, and then it'll kind of vanish behind the one on the right as it continues to rise. So right when the moon, it's like a very difficult thing to notice. First of all, like this is when I tried to ask Randall about this. I was like, how easy would this be to see? Like the moon's going to be there for 20 minutes a day during the standstill. So you have 3 years where for 20 minutes during the day when the moon rises, it's going to be right there in that spot. After that, it disappears behind the pillar.
Yeah.
As it continues to rise. So you have to be up there to notice this. Now, maybe if you're, eventually you notice it, but do you know what's happening? You have to know why it's there, Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm trying to figure out. How did they get around to saying, let's use this to mark this? Like first you may notice it and you'll be like, wow, look, it's cool. The moon's right between the pinnacles or whatever. That's it. That's the end, unless you're really interested in astronomy and know that the moon moves back and forth already, Now, I guess you could say, well, if you're living up there, why would you live there in the first place when there's valleys down below that have lots of water and everything's easy?
Yeah.
And
That's the other thing about it is that there's no known sources of water way up on this mountain.
Or in Chaco Canyon, this is a problem with the Pueblo culture in general.
Yeah.
I asked our first guide about this. I was like, look, this is a problem with the Pueblo culture in general. Yes, they didn't have sources of water that are obvious in any of the places they built stuff.
Right.
So that takes me back to like some stuff I've seen about Hopi, the Hopi oral traditions about how when they began their wanderings after the end of the last cataclysm, they went all the way they left the Grand Canyon, which is where they believe that they emerged from the earth after being taken care of by the ant people. Then they migrated to the West Coast, all the way over to California somewhere, where they were met by the ocean god. Like you've got Enki comes out of the water, or Alanis, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
One of the civilizer gods comes out of the water and gives them, and this is a classic, gives them 3 objects of power. Okay, and in the Hopi stories, they had 3 clans, 3 families, however you would say it. They were together, but there were 3 distinct families, and this god gives each one of them an object of power, and then describes for them their future wanderings. Okay, he's like, here's what I want you to do, and they split up. The 3 families each went their own way, and one had an object of power, and another, each one had one object of power. And supposedly, according to the Hopi mythology, well, maybe not according to them, but this was people putting this together, is that one of the objects of power was a quote unquote jar or container that was always full of water magically. Just it always had water. Mm-hmm. And so those people were able to live in places where, because the god says you need to migrate to these places over the next 10,000 years, and then end up here at the Hopi mesas in the middle, which is what they did. And if you look at their migration pattern, it describes the constellation of Orion across the United States, with the 3 Hopi mesas where they live now being the belt stars. Okay, and supposedly the one clan that had to go to live in certain spots where the stars were describing the constellation of Orion, those places didn't have sources of water, so they were given this jar.
It was an air conditioner.
Yeah,
It's always full of water.
It condensed water out of the air. So anyway, I always think of that when I think of the Chaco mystery of where did they get their water. I mean, the Chaco Canyon, where they had the sun dagger and all that stuff, there was an enormous amount of people living there, and there was no known source of water.
Right.
So,
and the other thing that was cool about Chimney Rock, when you're way up there, you're looking out in the distance, and way off in the distance, you can see these mesas sticking up.
yeah.
And you're standing at an area where there used to be a structure that all that was left of it was basically the foundation, but it was a tower, right? I guess the archaeologists or whatever had figured out that this tower was pretty tall.
Oh, yeah.
And there are multiple towers on these high prominences in very distant places from Chimney Rock. I can't remember what the miles are. Maybe Watcher, you could look this up too. They were thought to be signal towers. There was a bunch of evidence of burning, extremely hot fires inside of them. And, there was a lot of debate as to whether or not they could signal to other people. And some...
a high school girl.
Yeah, a high school girl took mirrors or had put a team together. And they took these mirrors and they went to all these different sites that are miles and miles away from each other and used the mirrors to see if they could
Signal each other.
And they can. You can see the reflections on these mirrors. So thus proving that these were actually signal towers using the light from the fires.
Right. So she would stand on the ruins of one signal tower, and somebody many miles away on another ridge line would be standing on the ruins of another, and they were able to signal each other with little flashes of light using the mirrors, which means obviously if you had a big tower with a fire burning on it, that the person many miles away could see the fire from their spot.
Yeah.
So you got this idea of everybody saw the Lord of the Rings where the signal towers get lit, and the signal towers are all across these mountains, and each one is in view of 2 others in the row.
Yeah.
So once you light one, then the people at the other one start lighting them, and the signal goes all the way down the line to both ends.
Call a locksmith.
That's right.
Call a locksmith.
That's right. I think I actually said that to.
Yeah, you did. So I'm trying to get the Watcher to find out how far these were, because it's an incredibly long distance that they think that these signal towers.
Well, they think that the tower line would have reached all the way to Chaco. I mean, so that's 90 miles away.
67 miles.
Yeah.
The distances between the sites range from 2.7 miles to 67
miles off.
So this is incredible. They're hauling incredibly heavy loads. Now, we're not talking about Baalbek stones, but these ponderosa pine logs. 90 miles in some cases.
Right.
And they literally clear cut the forest there around Chimney Rock, which is where most of the ponderosa pines in that area were growing. Chaco didn't have any. But there's, you know.
And according to the standard model, these were people in butt flaps with spears, no beasts of burden, and no wheel.
Right.
So they were, and they like the guides kept telling every Chimney Rock trip I went on, the guides were describing, imagine these people are carrying all this stuff up here on their backs.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, how did they get those Ponderosa pine logs to Chaco Canyon on their backs? I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
And
then, you know, people have theorized, well, they rolled the logs, but if they had rolled them, by the time you got 90 miles away over all that rock and all that,
yeah, you would be able to see it. And there's no evidence.
They'd be splintered and just.
Right. The logs still exist because we're not talking about that long ago. These are 1000 AD is when this culture supposedly existed. So the logs are still there, and
Many of them, yeah.
Many of the logs are still there, and there's no evidence of them being beaten up like that by being rolled across 90 miles of harsh terrain.
Yeah, and there's no rivers that
you can float
them down.
Right.
So that's just
so we need to take a break.
Mystery.
And we'll come back.
All right, okay.
Yeah. Just going to stop you right there. And welcome back. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, Hour 2, Episode 100.
Yeah.
So we are still talking about the Contact at the Cabin trip. We are going to be talking about that for the rest of the show. And Kyle's he went and retrieved one of his pamphlets that he got for the Mesa Verde. Is that Mesa Verde? Yeah.
Yeah, this is it's a little brochure that talks about the mesa a little bit and shows you some maps and then some of the different constructions on top.
Yeah. So finishing up here with Chimney Rock, which we went to I went twice. Kyle went 3 times. GMA and I took a break from the third time of going and went on a hike. But anyway, Chimney Rock was impressive in many ways. Like geologically, it was very impressive because of the pinnacles. They were enormous. And even when you were all the way up there on the ridge where they had built the quote unquote temple, whatever it was, the 6 million stone temple at the very top of the ridge, those pinnacles were far away. I mean, they were way off. And, you know, they just made this imposing, awesome, I can't really describe it. And then, of course, since you're up on the ridge, the landscape all around you just falls away to either side. And I mean, on one side, it's like sheer. Yeah, like it's freaking straight down.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, is that some of the quote unquote, what do they call them? Pit houses, where they thought these people lived, are built on the edge of the cliff. Like
right on the freaking edge, especially in Mesa Verde. But also, like when we were what?
Yeah, especially there. But no, I mean, like the stonemasonry goes all the way up to the edge, and you're just like, what stonemason?
Yeah, who was on the outside putting those rocks there? And the other thing is, like, when we're up on that ridge, they would point across, like, so the ridge kind of described this big curve, and off to the right, when you're walking up, when you're climbing the ridge, off to the right, there's this huge, just sheer drop off that just went, and it made this big round, sort of an amphitheater kind of, like not perfectly round, but you know what I mean? It was a curved ridge. So you've got this sort of round, and then way off there, there's another ridge that's sort of out in the middle of this bowl-shaped thing, and they're pointing out that there were structures on that too. Yeah. You know? And like when you're looking at that, you're like, how did they even get up there? There's just no access, you know? Yeah. I mean, it would basically be, you would have to be like, it'd be like climbing a hill that's so steep, you have to use your hands to climb it. And your feet. You're not climbing straight up, but it's steep enough to where you're basically crawling up the cliff. It's so steep. And they brought these enormous logs up there, all these stones up there, and then built this badass stuff on top of it.
And the other mystery about it was that all of the buildings, like when they excavated these, because most of the quote unquote pit houses were just, they look like donut-shaped piles of rock. And they would excavate down and find the well-built structures near the bottom, like the actual masonry.
Remnants. Yeah.
and then some of them they would rebuild using the rocks from the donut-shaped pile of rocks to sort of put them back together using modern mortar and whatnot. But the bottom gave them the layout basically of the structure. So a lot of what we were looking at, we're still questioning, like, is this even correct? But what I'm getting to is that in the excavations, they're finding charred pieces of these ponderosa pine logs, that used to be part of the structure. And there are even like holes in the masonry where pieces of the logs are protruding from, but the main part of the log has been burnt and it's just charcoal. So this is everywhere in every one of these quote unquote houses, whatever they are. They're burnt logs. And so the idea is that whoever built them set them all on fire when they left.
Yeah. For some
that's
reason.
right, Watcher.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, for some reason.
Watcher was there. You were there, buddy.
Yeah. Well, one of the best, the views from the tops of these ridges were amazing. And one of the best ways to describe is like when we went there the second time and the Watcher was there with us. We were all in line, we're climbing up, and we get up to the point to where suddenly you can see out everything. And I hear him back there, and he's like, Mother of God. When you first see that view, you're just like, holy shit. Like, not only are we way up here, but now you can see everything. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so the idea that the guides kept talking about was that the standard model story is that these people eventually... they had this idea that like, well, they weren't good stewards of the area. They clear cut everything, and then suddenly then maybe there was a drought, and so they set everything on fire and left.
Yeah, they realized they had to leave, and this was such a sacred site to them that they didn't want later peoples to come along and desecrate their sacred sites, so they burned them down.
Yeah, because that's not desecration.
I'm just like, no, that's a terrible theory.
Yeah. No one knows why they were burnt down. Yeah, that's just they're attempting to explain it.
Yeah, but the other point, like I think you made this point originally, was that like, okay, you're running out of resources, you're running out of water. Building fires is hard.
Yeah, yeah. You actually made that point initially. Okay. Yeah, and Kyle was just pointing out like, okay, if you're suddenly running out of resources and wood and everything like that, building a bunch of like thousands of fires. And mostly stone structures is not an easy task.
Yeah, because there's no longer a massive forest there for you to just set the whole thing on fire and leave.
Right.
There's no way to do that, especially not on Chimney Rock where it's just rock.
Right. So one interesting thing that we noticed, and this was sort of like, it was weird how this, you have these two things interconnected and the people there don't, maybe it's because they're in it. I don't know. But anyway, the point is that when we were going to Chimney Rock, because the weather the whole time we were in Pagosa, except for like 2 or 3 days, the weather was very turbulent. Like you'd have periods of calm, but there were always clouds in the sky, and there were always storms off in the distance that you could see all around us.
Suddenly get snowed on, and then
right, and then it would rain a little bit, and then there would be sleet, and then it would go away, and it would just be windy as hell, and then be freezing, and so. But anyway, one of the guides we went up there the second time, he had a freaking device on his belt that was a lightning detector, like where he basically was like, yeah, if this thing goes up to red, we have to get down off the ridge because, also the area where the Chaco and Signal Tower had been, the Forest Service had built a fire watch tower because they have lightning strikes that start fires all over the place. They have problems with this. There was one while we were there that not near us, but there was a lightning fire that they had to deal with at some point during the week we were there. And when we were in Mesa Verde, there were whole square miles of forest had been burnt flat, and they had signs like this was from the fire from 2002. This was from the fire from 2014. So I'm just thinking like, okay. Like, so they leave, and a lightning strike burns everything down. Yeah. I mean, like, why does it have to be that they did it?
Yeah.
We already know that lightning strikes start fires here, and then it goes tearing through all the brush and burns everything down. So why not that?
Yeah.
Instead, they have, it's just the standard model viewpoint. They have this lens.
Therefore temple.
Right.
And,
sacred therefore
stuff
desecration. And yeah, right. Whereas like, you know, like you don't think to yourself, well, I've got to leave my astronomical observatory, so I need to burn it down, right? No, if I have to leave because something weird is happening, I'm just going to leave my telescope there, and you know, maybe I'll come back for it.
And that's why I love the way that Randall thinks. His presentation the first night, before we ever saw any of this stuff or listened to any of the guides and all of their explanations for everything, Randall gives this presentation that simply lays out the facts. Like, here's this place, and this is roughly what the timeline apparently is, and yet, you know, of course, this is all archaeological conjecture, whatever. But here's the actual alignments, and here's the actual geometry, and here's what it's similar to, and here's what the timeline is similar to, and here's the great mysteries involved in all of this stuff, and, you know.
Yeah.
And then we go see it, and when you hear the standard model that the guides are spouting, you're just like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
You know, they've got these little models built down in the
the little dioramas they made.
Yeah, with the houses that have holes in the roofs with a ladder that goes over top of the fireplace, and they all went down in there and they did their rituals. You know, it was all religious and ritualistic and
I mean, one of the big problems I had with, you know, I can understand maybe you have maybe for whatever reason you decide that the main entryway you want to have into your house is through a hole in the roof. But why do you have to do that to get into every room? None of the rooms, well, very few of the rooms, like when you look at the big structures, they didn't have any obvious access to other rooms in the big structure.
And
so like that means you have to, like, if you're in your bathroom, you know, just imagine if you're in your house, you're in your bathroom, to get over to your bedroom, you have to leave the house and go back and come in another door to get into your bedroom. Like, to get to any other room in the house, you have to go outside and then come around and go inside.
Right. When there's harsh weather.
Yeah.
A lot.
Which means you have to put a big roof over your building. And some of these buildings have, I mean, like the one right there, that's like got 20, 30 rooms in it, whatever. Right? That one on that map that
30 rooms.
Yeah, so 30 rooms. So imagine there's no access to any of those rooms from any of the other rooms. So how do you get from one room to the other? You got to have 30 holes in your roof.
Which makes no sense to me at all.
Right.
I mean, all of our structures, like one of the most important things once you're past the foundation is the roof. And you don't want any holes in your roof.
Yeah.
And we do have certain holes in our roofs, a chimney.
Yeah.
But nobody goes through it.
Right. And vents. We have air vents sometimes, you know, but those are for air ventilation.
They have to be flashed like very specifically to prevent water penetration. And this is just like, you know, a big hole that a grown man with stuff on his back can fit through with a ladder.
Yeah.
Over top of a fire. It just doesn't make sense. So so the trip wasn't just walking around looking at geology. There was a lot of that on our drives to and from these places. We'd stopped at a lot of overlooks, and Randall would hold forth on, you know,
glacial action and floods and erosion.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
But then there was just this vast mystery of these people and all of this stuff that they built. And I don't know if we're done with Chimney Rock, but.
Well, yeah. So at some point we need to move to Mesa Verde.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like the second site we went to was Mesa Verde, which was like
enormous,
2.5 hours away or something.
Yeah. So Kyle and I were van drivers, so that was great because it was something to do. Like I would have probably not had a good time riding in the vans. Everybody else had a great time riding the vans, but for me, driving was fantastic.
Yeah, same here. I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Doing it. Well, we went to the airport and got our names put on the insurance and stuff. So
yeah,
we were official van drivers, and it was great. It was a great job to have.
Yeah. And we got to communicate by radio. Boop. What are you doing? Over now. Boop.
Felt useful.
The whole van would shut up when they heard the radio going. It was cool. Very official. And we had joked that we were like cults, man. We would show up in these white vans and everybody would pour out and we're like, oh, yeah, there's ancient shits where they were. Look at this geology. All right, worship Randall Carlson. Get back in the van. I mean, we all get out and there's this like really tall bearded guy who's like leading us around. It was so cult-like.
That's true. But yeah, going to Mesa Verde was what like so Chimney Rock. You get this somewhat small picture. I mean, it's a huge site, but as you're going up the hill, you're passing all these ruins, and you get up to the top and you see the main ruins, and it's just a massive site. But when you go, now we're going to Mesa Verde, and when we're climbing the mesa, the road going up there it's just incredible. Like, whoever cut this road, I was just like, man, this would have been the greatest dozer job ever. To cut this road, because you're going up. I think it's at 7,000 feet in elevation on the high side, or let me see. I got it in my.
It's like 8,500 or something like that, all the way at the top.
Yeah, you're right. 8,571 at the top, and look, the map here has snowflakes illustrated.
Yeah.
So you go up on the high side of the mesa, but it's 2,000 feet above the river valley based on our. We just looked at the GPS when we were in the valley.
Yeah.
And then we looked at the GPS when we were on top. So it's roughly around that. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but I packed extra clothes. You just never knew, because it snowed the first night we got there, and the weather was kind of sporadic. So we grabbed a bunch of extra layers. Well, we get up on top of the mesa, and there's these overlooks. You just pull over. It's just a place you can park, and you just walk out, and there's a railing or something, and you can just look out, and it was freezing cold. The wind was blowing like crazy.
Yeah, and it was awesome.
And it was awesome. You can see for miles and miles on the flat earth. And
John, a guy named John was there on the last. He was part of the third trimester. He's a hilarious dude. He comes walking back after we're at one of the what was it called, Far View. Yeah. We're at Far View, which is where you can see the most. You can practically see, like, we're close to the Four Corners area, right? So you can see all the way into other states. And he comes walking past me. He's like, the views are okay, I guess. I mean, you can only see 3 states from here. His humor style was freaking hilarious. I guess they're all right. They're pretty big, I guess. But yeah, from Far View, you could see another feature that Randall and Brad kept pointing out to every group. A thing called Shiprock. And this was way off in the distance. And we only really got to see it really well on the third trip. Shiprock was way out there. And I mean, like, you can see mountains in Utah over in one direction. And, so Shiprock was way out there. And they pointed out that it's over. There's a ridge between you and it, but you can see it's out in this big flat plain. And it's just this enormous thing sticking up. Like, think Devil's Tower style.
Yeah.
And it's volcanic itself. It's part of a volcanic ridge, and you can actually see the remnants of the rest of the ridge running along in a line going off to the left from Shiprock itself. And it was like, that was so cool. And we also had Gage with us, who was one of the cooks, but he was also a geologist. So he was picking up rocks and pointing out, like, oh, look, you can see he was showing how, you could see the volcanic, I can't remember all the geology terms that he used, but it was really ventricles.
Yeah, there was
you see the ventricles here, how it solidified as it was coming down as a pyroclastic flow.
There was a layer of coal up on one of the ridges that you're driving by.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have stopped and got some. Mm-hmm. But anyway, you get to the top of the mesa, and it's freezing cold, and the wind's blowing like crazy, and then you start driving further into the mesa, and it's sloping down from this point, and it slopes all the way down to about 7,000 feet in elevation. So 1,500 feet lower on the other side. But as you get back in there to where the canyons are, the canyons that are cut into the top of the mesa, we got to the first one, and there's a museum there and everything, and you get out, and it's warm, and there's no wind. Mm-hmm. It's calm. Totally different climate.
Yeah.
In this place, just a few miles distant from the
right, and that was where Cliff Palace was, what they call Cliff Palace, right?
That was Cliff
Palace was
Petroglyph Trail. Yeah, it was nearby.
Cliff Palace was on the other side of the canyon, or whatever that was over there, the huge city that was.
Yeah, that was Cliff Palace. Yeah. So yeah, there's these massive canyons with these huge overhangs, and underneath the overhangs are basically cities built all over the place. I mean, just
even where there weren't overhangs, they're just like there were huge overhangs where they had built enormous cities, but there were also, like, you could see at various levels
Little
on the
tiny
canyon walls,
overhangs.
they're just like little tiny overhangs and stuff, and there's structures all over the place, remnants, ruins.
And they're way up high on these cliff edges,
Yeah.
and it's just
200 or 300 feet down from the top edge of the canyon and 400 feet up from the bottom or something like that. It's just enormous. And what was cool is, like, so geologically speaking, Randall described this, the mesa, he showed how he sort of gave a quick and non-complex, because this was probably a more complex process than this, but a non-complex process of how these form. So the mesa itself at some point is uplifted, and that uplift action causes fractures in the rock. Okay, so first you have an inland sea and it's dropping all this sediment because it was all sandstones.
yeah.
Okay. And then there's an uplift, and that uplift fragments, causes cracks in the sediment itself after the sea is gone. So this uplift happens, and there's cracks all in it. And then at some point after that, there's erosive action from a flood. So if water, an enormous amount of water, is running across the top of the mesa. Okay, this is the question, like, why did it happen before it uplifted or not? Because to get the fractures, you need the uplift to take place, or at least to begin, right? So the uplift begins, let's say that. It begins, and that starts to crack the rock. Then you have an enormous amount of water moving across it, and that water begins to...
Widen those cracks.
it works its way down into those cracks and starts to widen them. And first they become slot canyons, which are like, if you look at pictures of slot canyons, some of them are like too narrow for you. You have to turn sideways to walk through them, but they can be hundreds of feet tall. Okay, so the water works its way down into these fractures and starts exploiting them and widening them, and eventually they get them wide enough to where the water is then channelized into those cracks. So now it's no longer running across the top of the canyon. It's now channelized in these cracks. Okay, so that means that the water level is below the top of the cracks of the canyons themselves, and so then it begins to eat out the sides of the canyon and widen it, and then you end up with certain overhangs. But most of the overhangs we saw, we were noticing that they were probably made by vorticular action of the water, because
Right.
there would be some outcrop in the canyon wall, and then behind the outcrop, so you're looking at the direction of flow is coming from the left, and the flow is going towards the right. So the flow is coming in from the left, and then there's a big outcrop in the canyon wall. And then when you get past the outcrop, there's a big, huge overhang, and that's because that outcrop caused the water to cause
like a whirlpool
on the other side, and it just etched out this thing. And like in one case, what we saw was two canyons coming together. So the direction of flow is from the left again. There's two canyons coming together, and way down in the sing, like where they after they met. There's a
After
V
they
shape.
converge.
So like, and you could see directly in line down the downflow direction to the right, there was another huge overhang, and that's because the water flows came together and made this giant turbulent thing, and then cut that out. And every one of those, they built cities, basically.
Yeah.
4 or 5 story tall buildings from the bottom of the overhang to the top of it. And going way back in there, who knows how far, because we didn't get to go in them ourselves.
Yeah, and in some places there's like multiple overhangs within overhangs. So
Right.
you got the main overhang, and then if you look down inside it, there's another smaller jutting rock from the ceiling, but there's a gap between that one and the main overhang. And they got buildings all up in that, and that's probably like 40 feet above the base of the...
That's
You're just like, these people are nuts.
Yeah. And in some cases, there would be ledges, right? And so you imagine, like, you're up on this canyon wall, and it's a sheer rock face, 600 or 700 feet straight down. And we're looking, and there are these little tiny, like, flat ledges, and they've built buildings where the walls are, like, even with the edge of the ledge.
Yeah. It was mind-blowing. And,
Yeah.
and that was the thing, too, is that this mesa is huge. And we drove for miles and stopped at multiple different sites. And we passed a lot of sites that we never stopped at. There were
Right.
some specific places that Randall and Brad had kind of
Picked out.
planned and picked out to go to. And we stopped there, and like you get out over an overlook, and you can look in one direction, and there's a canyon coming in, and then there's the main canyon going by, and then you look in another direction, and you can see another canyon meeting, and there's telescopes up there, and you look through them, and all over the place, all the way up and down this, there's just buildings inside these little, large, small overhangs, wherever,
Yeah.
just everywhere. And then we drive for a couple of miles, and we get out, and you look over in the canyons, and there's just tons more.
Tons
It
more
was just-
buildings.
it was amazing to think about, like how much of this. Plus, there's just the rock fall from these cliff edges, and you imagine 1,000 years ago, all of the rock fall back up on the cliff face, and how many more buildings would there have been?
Right.
And if this place was full of people,
Yeah.
what would it have looked like? Did they have, 100-foot ladders going up to the tops, and they were coming down to their cities, or were they coming out of their cities and having 100-foot ladders going down to the bottom of the canyons?
Yeah.
What were they doing?
Yeah.
How did they get their water? It was just unbelievable, and I kept being struck like looking at Cliff Palace, for example, just this massive city that we're looking at from a distance under this incredibly massive overhang, and just thinking like, I can't believe this is in Colorado. Like that's what I kept.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I had no idea this
These,
stuff
like,
was here.
kind of like enormous structural ruins. Yeah. Yeah.
I had no idea this stuff was here. So that was just.
The other thing that struck me was, obviously, like we talked a lot with Randall and other people about what he called the motive, and not just so going back to Chimney Rock, why were they tracking the maximum lunar standstills? Okay. All the guides were talking about, well, they were farmers and so blah, 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 and they were showing us these little tiny corns, these baby corns they grew and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, if you found this at a grocery store, you'd be like, what the hell? I don't want this. This is too small, but this is what they had. And they were farmers. And Randall's like, look, you don't need to track the maximum and minimum lunar standstill to farm. It has nothing to do with farming.
Right.
As far as we know. Maybe it does. I don't know. As above, so below, something. There could be some weird correlation with, I don't know. But the point is that you can farm, Randall's like, look, you can stick a stick in the ground, draw a circle around it, and watch the shadow, and you can farm. Like, you don't need to go to this enormous amount of effort to build these structures, to track these, like, sort of, esoteric astronomical cycles. You don't need to, incorporate the angles of precessional rotation of the Earth's axis into your circular structures.
Yeah, so I just did some math here. If you divide the period of time that these people were doing all of this building by
Which is what?
It's about 200 and something years.
Yeah, so they built all this stuff in
230 years. So I'm going from 900 to 1130 AD, which is roughly like the building phases. But
Okay.
In some cases, it goes back to 600,
Yeah.
right? But whatever. 230 years, and then you divide that by the period of time for the lunar maximum standstill, you get 12 of those.
So you could watch it 12 times.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't seems like a lot of effort.
They had to have been farming for the 18 years, like
Yeah.
at least 18 years before they knew where the maximum standstill was going to be. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you can't live for 18 and a half years
Yeah.
without farming.
Right.
Or maybe they were just hunter-gatherers up until that point. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. They discovered that the moon rose between those pinnacles, and they decided, let's build giant city palaces all over the place at the tops of ridges and watch this happen.
And that was the other thing that
And
was
then set it all on fire.
that was cool. So where Cliff Palace was, there's this massive, like I guess it was the biggest one, the biggest overhang full of just a massive city.
Yeah.
That area is the same place where the Sun Temple was built on top of the promontory that pointed towards the summer solstice sunrise.
Yeah.
This D-shaped temple that I was talking about. And so it's like, you guys know how we think about this stuff. Like to me, they were doing science, right? And it doesn't matter what kind of science you're doing. It always has some benefit.
Yeah.
Like whatever, you're learning about the universe that you live in. So that's enough for me to as an answer, as much of an answer as I need, like for what was going on here, like with the Sun Temple, with Chimney Rock. Like, in other words, there was a lot of other stuff that they were doing for sure. And there was probably a lot of reasons why they were specifically doing things. But the fact is, they were doing astronomy. And you can obviously learn a lot of stuff from doing astronomy and the scientific process, making these alignments, learning about these cycles. So any scientific endeavor that you enter into is going to teach you something about the universe that you live in, and that's beneficial. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm not saying that that's the answer. Oh yeah, they were just doing science.
That is an answer.
Yeah, in other words, it's enough for me. I don't need to be like, well, like maybe they were worshiping something or blah, blah, blah. It doesn't need more than that. You see what I'm saying? You know?
Yeah. Like the reason I totally understand what you're saying. And you're right. That it needs to be pointed out that they were tracking these processes and they were not doing that because they were farmers. That's one of my points, because that has nothing to do with farming. Okay?
I agree with that.
So first, so you have to say, no, it's not because they were farmers. It's because they were scientists. Okay?
Yeah.
That's a big deal. The second thing is that I want to know why they were doing that science.
I agree.
And I don't know the answer to that, obviously, but one that I am more and more coming to sort of like, I like this idea, is that science that they were doing itself is a time capsule. In other words, it is a result of much more ancient science that's being carried forward through tradition. They may not have known why they were doing it. It's just that traditionally, this is what they did, and they carried that science forward, just like any esoteric story. You tell the story, you don't know why you're telling the story, or just you think it's a cool story, right? So maybe you have. This is just, remember, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is just an idea I have. So you imagine, because you go all the way back again to this story that they met up with the god who said, "Here's some objects. Here's what I want you to do," right? They're carrying something forward. In the same way that you tell somebody a parable that has esoteric meaning in it, and they carry it forward to the future without knowing what they're carrying.
Yeah.
That may be what's happening here.
Yeah. Why is Dad lining that building up with this moonrise? Because his father did it before his father, and his father's father's father did it too. And that's what you're going to do, lad.
That's right. It's like...
No, I think that's
if you imagine, if you go back to the idea of like an ancient lost civilization, there are few of them left, and they are trying to preserve their sciences and their knowledge and their understanding in any way that they can.
Yeah.
And they find capable people, and they teach them a few things. They give the Olmecs the calendar, right? They get, or that the way of counting the calendar. They don't know what cycles they're counting, but they're counting those cycles.
Right.
And they just do it for thousands of years. They have this enormous freaking circle.
Yeah.
And they're counting it, and they don't know why. They just know that.
Well, they don't have to know why. They might.
That's what I mean. Maybe they do, maybe some of them do, or they figure it out. But the point is that it's being carried forward.
Yeah.
And so is that. You're tracking this weird rolling of the lunar orbit.
Yeah.
There's no practical application to that in quote unquote primitive life. There's just no practical application, right? That we know of. I should say that.
Yeah, there might be some weird,
right?
there
weird, could be weird
like,
Asimov,
spiritual
Sobolos. Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah. So one idea, that's what I'm saying. The one idea that I like is that it is in and of itself a ritual time capsule. It's the purpose of these people doing these things and then following these patterns of migration was to carry forward ancient science that they didn't necessarily have to understand, even if they did or not,
Yeah, but even with that, they were excellent builders.
Yeah.
I mean, just like these buildings that were under the overhangs were preserved, where the ones that were out in the open were not. They were piles of rocks, piles of rubble.
Yeah.
So it's clear. I mean, they were able to build multi-storied 4 or 5-story structures out of stone and logs. They were cutting rock. They had it. It was fantastic construction. It's strange and compelling that the geometry that they were using over and over and over and over in many of these structures is in many ways similar to the geometry that was being used in the same sudden appearance of amazing
Yeah.
like stone construction going on in Europe with the Gothic cathedral building.
Yeah.
At the same time, Shamir.
Yeah.
So
Freaking Templars.
all right.
Trying to take a break.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Snakes. And with half our pyramids tied behind our backs, just to make it square, Brothers of the Serpent podcast, episode 100. Talking about the amazing mysteries of the Pueblo culture, the lost Pueblo culture.
Yep.
And I can't remember how far reaching that they were, but
Well, I know that they were in the Chaco Canyon. Their major centers of activity were Chaco Canyon and the Canyon of the Ancients,
yeah.
which are fairly close to each other. Not extremely close, but but they were spread out over a pretty large region.
Yeah. And before I forget, the temple structure on the top
Above Cliff Palace.
by Chimney Rock
Oh,
also had an alignment to the Crab Nebula.
that's right.
And supposedly that was a supernova
Yeah.
at the time.
It
that they were
appeared
there.
in the sky and blew everyone's mind for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the timeline is, but it'd be interesting if that began all of their astronomical
Yeah.
interests. Or, I mean, not all of them, but maybe.
Yeah, it must have been weird. I mean, if you try to imagine these people, and again, going back to something I said on the last Serpent's Musing podcast, trying to imagine what they thought of this sky. With,
Yeah.
like get rid of all of your astronomical, everything that we in modern physics have as like the idea of these giant burning balls out in space, and just like you don't know what any of that stuff is. All you know is it's there. So when a new one appears, what do you think?
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
if and an incredibly bright one.
Right.
It's like,
and so like you can imagine that there would have been you can just imagine, you don't know, but there could be hysteria, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden there's just like a new god in the sky, and it's like
Yeah.
it shows up and they're like, oh my God, what's going on? And everybody's trying to make predictions, and in 2 years it's gone.
yeah. and even like the planets, you got these planets, they're kind of drifting all around.
Yeah.
But if you paid attention, you'd notice, well, they're always kind of
Yeah, there's a pattern.
in line. There's this pattern. And,
Yeah.
And then this thing just shows up
Yeah.
like brighter than anything else.
Not a
And-
planet. It's not moving.
Yeah.
Just appears.
Yeah. So there was that alignment. I can't remember all the different ones, but the back to Mesa Verde and the Sun Temple up there, the D-shaped temple up there, that is similar to some of the structures in Chaco Canyon. Like there's one that's, I can't remember what it's called, but it's huge. And it's also sort of like a half circle with a straight line.
Yeah. And it's aligned to something. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wanted to read this. This is in this little pamphlet about the Sun Temple. It says AD 1250. So I'm not sure about that, but
Yeah. Either way, clearly it seems clear to me because of what we see here in Texas that overhangs are occupied. So
Yeah.
And they have occupation layers going back to 10,000 years.
yeah.
So
Sun Temple is an ever fascinating structure at Mesa Verde. Excavations in 1915 led Dr. Jesse Walter Fox to conclude that this building was constructed for worship, and its size is such that we may practically call it a temple. Fox News. Fox believed Sun Temple's D-shaped floor plan was intentional from the beginning of construction. Nearly every stone in the 1,000 feet of finely masoned walls was carefully pecked on the surface. Geometric designs were inscribed on the face of some. The 4-foot thick walls were double coursed and filled with a rubble core. Neither household goods nor roof beams were found, indicating the structure of nearly 30 rooms was probably never finished. Why would Sun Temple have been so carefully thought out but never completed? And then there's this weird natural rock basin on the this is the southwestern corner of the building. It says the existence of a natural rock basin in the southwestern corner led Fox to speculate that it served as a solar marker and that people from the surrounding cliff dwellings attended ceremonies here. So, just past Sun Temple is a fine view of Cliff Palace, which is also true. Anyway, I think that guy's...
So on the second... What? No, he's just like there for Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the second trip to Mesa Verde, we went down Petroglyph Trail, which turned out to be a lot longer than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, 2 hours.
Yeah. But basically, you got to hike down the side of the canyon, cross the bottom of it, which was surprisingly narrow at the bottom. You remember that? When we got to the bottom of the canyon, it wasn't that wide.
No, it's really, really narrow. Yeah.
Really narrow. So the canyon is V-shaped, basically. But there were enormous trees down there where you cross the bottom and then you start going along the other side. And you go way down and there's like huge overhangs you're coming to and walking alongside of, and there's ruins stuck in them. And enormous features, you know. And in one place, Kyle started poking around in the dirt underneath one overhang and found some stuff.
Corn cob.
Corn cob.
Found a corn cob and a pine cone.
Yeah. Which looks similar. So we were going to the petroglyphs, and I remember thinking when I was looking at the petroglyphs, like, who did these? There's no way of knowing. Like,
right.
We don't know did the Chacoan people make them? You know, the Pueblo people that built the Cliff Palace, were they made after by later tribes who found those structures and were like, holy shit, and then they draw these stories? Or were they much older?
Yeah. I have a feeling they were much older.
Yeah, I think they were old.
Yeah, that was really strange. Just like this one phase, and it's interesting too that the petroglyphs I saw in Utah and Moab all appeared on these darkened faces of the rock.
Yeah.
So like they were
Scratching out the patina or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something about that, whichever direction it was facing, the angle, whatever, I don't know exactly what it is, but it gets this dark brown patina over it. And normally, like most of the faces of the rock are a light sandstone color.
Yeah.
But these dark faces apparently are well preserved, right? So it's hard to tell, are the petroglyphs there because where the petroglyphs were everywhere else is now gone because they've been rockfall split off? Or did they
purposefully use that?
It's like this patina means that this face is extremely old, so let's write on it.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But in Utah, it was, you'd be going along and there's just the normal colored cliff faces, and then you come to this one cliff face and it's just really dark, and then bam, there's all the petroglyphs themselves are the color of all the rest of the cliff faces because they've chipped away at that patina. Huh. And this was exactly the same.
Yeah.
And all the way down on that hike in the canyon, I'm looking at the walls all over the place, and none of them are the right color. They're all light colored. And I come around a corner and bam, there's the dark colored wall, and it's covered in petroglyphs.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. And I always get this kind of, obviously we don't know what we're looking at, but I always get this kind of eerie feeling when I see these petroglyphs. It doesn't look, I don't know, just the way that the figures are drawn and the stuff that's happening. It's just like, I can't tell if it's my bias, but they always look like they're trying to show you something that was not cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone's running with their hands up or whatever it is. It's like they're and then the handprints themselves are like sad. They're like, I was here. That's what those remind me of. It's a signature.
Yeah. And these are not paintings. They're like, if you look closely, I don't know,
They're
what's
pecked
it called? Stippling or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
all these little divots
Yeah.
that were cut out. And they're fairly deep. I'd say a quarter inch at the most.
Right. So they were making an effort to make them last.
Yeah. And there was one that, like, I agree with you, and the overall feel of the petroglyphs all the time is just kind of like this.
Sort of an eerie kind of. Yeah.
But there's this one depiction of these two birds with their beaks together.
Yeah. People were like, oh, look at the kissing birds. They're kissing. I'm like, I don't think that's what's happening, but okay.
That's But then it made me think of like the eyes, you know, it's like the two birds.
Yeah.
Like make the in one sense, they kind of look like eyeballs.
Yeah.
Like the mask or something.
Right. Well, and I also think of, you know, are they drawing what they're seeing in the sky?
Right.
And
Yeah.
like, yeah, you see birds in the sky, but no, I mean, like they're trying to show a shape. So like, just like,
You're talking about the plasma forms.
Yeah.
Yeah. There
Like
was the classic shaman shapes.
Yeah.
On there. I
Yeah.
got some pictures.
yeah. And then there was one weird handprint that had circles on each fingertip, made it look
Oh, really?
alien. Yeah, remember that? All the hands were kind of normal, big, but normal. They were pretty big hand. Like they didn't look big from where you could stand, but if you climbed up there, they were actually big hands.
Oh, they.
That's what I mean. They look small. They look like kids'
Oh yeah,
hands.
yeah. No, they were full. Like I put my hand up and it just basically would fit in.
That's what. Yeah, that's,
perfectly.
I don't mean like giant. I mean
Okay.
like they looked like children's fingers from down where we were standing. But if you climbed up there, put your hand on it, it would fit an adult grown hand. But the one that was all the way to the right, all the fingertips had big circles on them, like it had suckers at the end.
Oh,
You don't remember that? Look at your picture, and it's
I don't have it on my
first
phone.
freaking hand picture I noticed. I was like, what is that alien freaking hand right there with the suckers on the end of it? Or maybe that shaman was really powerful. He's like, bam! Freaking all at his fingertips, the rock popped off. But yeah, the petroglyphs are always eerie to me, and that one, you know, just. I mean, we were cracking jokes at the time, and because everybody had their hands up, we were making jokes about. What was that song? Take your butt flap off, spin
Yes.
around your head like a helicopter. Yeah.
that's right.
Chaco Canyon, come on and raise up.
That's right. Take your butt flip off.
Spinning like twisting around your head, spinning like a helicopter. But in general, that was just, you know, we were joking about it and sort of laughing, but at the same time, like there's something about being there. Like I've seen thousands of pictures of petroglyphs and they're always eerie, but standing there and looking at them, and I'm just like, who stood here and made these?
Yeah.
And why? And what are they saying?
Yeah.
And I can't tell because I've had this feeling about petroglyphs, even the ones I look at in Australia. Like there's beautiful rock art in Australia that's incredibly, some of it's 20, 30, 40,000 years old. And it's the same thing. And I've been looking at these from long before I knew anything about Randall Carlson or catastrophic geology or anything like that. I'm looking at them and I get the same, and it isn't the same sensation as a mystery. There's a sort of a, you know, where you look at something and it's mysterious. There's a little bit of that. But the most overwhelming sensation I have is like, there's something eerie about it.
Yeah. Almost like it's a warning sign or something.
Yeah, like there's some kind of, I get some sort of like, this is, I don't know, I can't really describe it. There's just a sensation of, it's like looking at a haunted house.
Yeah.
You know?
The other thing I would say in general about Mesa Verde was when you're driving up from that valley, it takes a long time
Yeah.
to get to the top in a car. And you get up there and you realize there's no water source. Now, obviously, if there was snowfall on top, then the snow melt would be a water source,
Yep.
right? Or the snow itself would just be a water source in the
Yeah.
wintertime. But in the summertime, there's no water,
Right.
very little rainfall.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was just like, man, it would be interesting to start in the valley on foot and get up here and just see like how long that
How
takes,
long does it take?
And so there was some discussion going back and forth about that. Well, then I read this plaque somewhere about the people who first discovered the Cliff Palace.
The
And,
first modern discovery of the Cliff Palaces. Yeah.
in the late 1800s. And they organized these field trips, basically, these tours where they would take people up there. And it was a 3-day trip. You paid $15 and they took you in wagons. I guess it was like it was 25 miles basically from the base camp. They take you in wagons 15 miles.
Yeah, like horse drawn.
Yeah. And then the rest of the 10 miles you had to be on foot or on horseback. And you get all the way up in there, and then you get to look at Cliff Palace or whatever, and then you have to turn around and come back. Took 3 freaking days with horses. And these people supposedly didn't have beasts of burden.
Right.
So how long did it take them on foot to think that they didn't have water, or there's no water source. So just being up there and seeing all of this stuff gave you this eerie feeling of like,
yeah. So the mesa.
What were they doing up there?
Yeah. The mesa itself is uplifted from the valley floor. So the bottoms of the canyons are above the valley floor. So there's no water. There's just not any water. There may be places somewhere where there's, but I mean, I don't remember seeing this in any park maps where there might have been standing basins so they built them. We did go to some places where you could walk on some trails and there were structures along the trail. And there was one enormous cistern, just a gigantic circular thing that they had built on the top of the mesa to hold water.
And I think there was also, I remember hearing something being described as like, they did find these sort of natural basins or whatever, and they would build berms and all this kind of stuff to direct water flow to these areas to keep them full.
Yeah.
So it's like
snow melt and stuff like that.
Right. So
you're having to make your water. There was no water source.
So you wouldn't have that if there was water source, right?
Right.
Like you're basically doing water catchment.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like similar to what you're saying about the petroglyphs, just the entire area up there was just like, I don't know, some strange feeling about how many hundreds or thousands of people were there and why.
Yeah. And also it seemed, so unlike.
And they showed up there from somewhere else. And it's like, why, if you showed up in this area, why would you say, hey, let's go up there and live there? And so that kind of tells you, like, it suggests that whatever was going on elsewhere was really bad.
Right.
You had to go up there and live under a cliff.
One of the, like, I didn't get this so much from Chimney Rock, but from Mesa Verde, I got the idea of this is secret. It's all hidden. You can walk along the top of this mesa for freaking days and never see any of this stuff.
That's true.
You come up to the edge of the canyon, you're like, holy shit, there's an enormous canyon here. And there was plenty of canyon we saw that didn't have any structures because there weren't any overhangs. And there's just freaking miles and miles of enormous canyon. You're like, well, I can't climb down there. So you go along and there's just like square miles of top of mesa. And, it's like, in other words, you have to know. So when you come up on Cliff Palace, it's invisible. You walk up, there's the edge, you can see the edge of the canyon out there, and you're like walking along, and suddenly you get right up to the edge, and then you can see it. Like, you have to be right there. It's
on the edge.
It's secret. And I talked to Randall about this. I was like, don't you get the idea that this is all sort of hidden? Like, when you look at Cliff Palace down there, there's a huge city stuck in the wall of the canyon. You look up above it, it's just flat mesa top, There may, on one place, in some places they did build structures on the top of the mesa, like the temple or whatever, because they were doing astronomical stuff. But they were just like you couldn't really see them. And in the city, it was just all hidden, is what I'm saying. And like in some cases when we were there, they had huge fires that raged across the top of the mesa. Another interesting fact: those fires did not climb down into the canyons.
Yep.
So any fire you had, if you're down in the canyon or whatever, like the whole freaking mesa could be burning. You're like, some ashes fall down or whatever. But the first thing that happens if your house catches on fire, what are you supposed to do? Drop to the floor, right? So down in the canyons, they could have humongous fires burning across the top of the mesa, and they would be on because all the bad gas and smoke.
So that's a great reason to live under there too. I mean, there's
Right. But still, the question is, why are you on the mesa in the first place?
Yeah.
Why not be down in the valley where all the rivers are and all the water is? Right. So you're up here building hidden cities in slot canyons and on top of this gigantic mesa that are almost impossible to
and
find
having
unless
to
you
do
know
all this ridiculous work to get water.
Right. And so unless you know exactly where they are, you can't find them. It's all, that's what I was saying. I was like, Randall, don't you think they were hiding from something? It's like they were hiding. This is all hidden and secret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
So the archaeologists or the guides and other people and the dioramas in the museum and everything talked about how there was no signs of warfare with these people. They didn't seem to have, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Just all of their buildings were burnt flat and then they disappeared. But there's no sign of any conflict. I mean, you know, this one of the things that happens in war is you raid the place and you set it on fire and then you leave. So that could be an explanation of that. And one of the reasons they might be up there is because they were hiding from, you know, marauding bands
For
of
hundreds of years. You know,
it's
hard to explain. Very difficult to explain.
Yeah.
Along with all of this stuff, of course, you know, hanging out with Randall Carlson and driving all around looking at massive canyons, there's constantly the talk of the catastrophic meltdown that happened at the end of the
That's right.
last ice age.
Yeah, because on one hand you're looking at these structures, but on the other hand you're looking at the canyons.
Yeah, and that was just
And
so it's like you imagine this. I know these canyons or the structures, the people. We're talking in AD here. So
Yeah, supposedly.
yeah, supposedly.
Meh.
But still, it's like no one was there, and then these people just showed up in large numbers, large enough to build all of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, from
And
where?
and according to the standard model timeline, we're talking 200 years or so. Like they you know, between 200 and 400 years or something like that. They built enormous amounts of structures and then vanished. So
Yeah. Big dry cataract at the end of Petroglyph.
yeah, so at the Petroglyph Trail, when you climbed back up to the top of the other side of the canyon and then you walked along, there was a huge cataract. You crossed to get back to the museum.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you walk across and like the canyon just begins right there. It's just like you walk right next to where the canyon just suddenly, like you're on the flat mesa top and then it just drops off into this enormous hole.
Yeah.
And then the canyon is going from there. And it was a cataract fall. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really weird too. It wasn't like a slow progression.
Right. It's a sheer drop off cataract. So the water was dropping off at some point and eating its way back until it stopped flowing.
Right.
And now you have a dry cataract.
And that's the cool thing is looking at it on
And so the
Google.
watcher pointed that out.
Like
Yeah.
if you go on your computer, you look on Google Maps and you turn the terrain on and you look at Mesa Verde, you see that it's cut. I mean, these canyon, like the main canyons are all parallel, running basically parallel
roughly
to
parallel with each other.
I guess from north to south.
Yeah.
And so the
Water can't flow north.
Yeah, right. The ice sheet was up there further north, and at some point, this catastrophic melting just completely scarred out these canyons. Before, during, after the uplift, no one knows. But where it sits right now, there's no reservoir or basin
That could possibly
hold the water that cut these canyons. So it had to be coming from the ice sheet.
Yeah.
And if the ice sheet was there, it probably wasn't. It was maybe in the process of being uplifted. It was just like every aspect of this trip was massive, mind-blowing mysteries all the time.
Giant mystery boner the whole time. And it was a huge fractal mystery. And every way you possibly could look at it, something was weird.
Yeah.
And didn't make sense.
Yeah. And just going back to the event itself, brilliantly conceived, nearly flawlessly executed. The lodge was beautiful, awesome, big main living area with a big TV and Randall would give his
gas
presentations.
fires
up there.
going the whole time. It was freezing, and we get up in the morning and come in from camp because we were camping. A lot of people had rooms. The lodge could hold like 60 people with beds, and it had a whole basement. So there was a lot of room in there, and like we
60
come in.
people, really?
Yeah, that's what it said was the max occupancy was 60. We never had it that many people or whatever, but so we would come in freezing in the morning, and you get a hot cup of coffee and sit down next to they had a giant fireplace in there, and everybody's talking or whatever. And I'm like, leave me alone until I have my coffee. Don't fucking talk to me. And Randall learned that over time. He'd see me in the morning and be like, "Good morning, Russ." Like he'd say it to me like he knew I was freaking grumpy. And I'm like, "Good morning, Randall." And the camaraderie and just everything was great. And the porch discussions, like there's a big back porch.
Yeah.
And we'd all go out there. Did I interrupt you? Something you were trying to say? I'm sorry.
That's
Just
fine.
Jumped right in.
Keep going.
Yeah. So we go out on the porch and have huge discussions, and of course Star Watch at night, and people brought scopes, and GMA had his spotter scope, and we were looking at Jupiter, looking at the moons of Jupiter.
Yeah.
UFOs. Graham did CSETI things. He did 3 of them. I got to go on one of them. It's a lot of fun. You go out there and we went way out into the field, away from the lodge on the other side of the lake. And sort of everybody sits down, and then he reads this kind of meditation thing, and we all sort of focus on like, well, I want to see something in the sky, and you get flashes and weird things happening, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, what I was thinking of too was just the flow of the event. Like if you went to one trimester, you show up and it's just a big sort of everyone hanging out inside the lodge. You're walking around. It's just, disparate conversations going on everywhere, and you can meet. Everybody's meeting. It's sort of the meet and greet, right, where everybody's arriving.
Yeah.
And at some point, Randall starts getting ready, set up to do his presentation. Everybody gathers around in the main hall, the main room, and finds a seat, and the lights go out, and Randall does his presentation for an hour or two, and people are asking questions, making comments, and
cracking jokes.
Yeah. And meanwhile, your mind is getting blown by, and it's like I watched Randall's presentation on basically the introduction to Chimney Rock and Mesa Verde, which
3 times.
Yeah, but every time there was just
new
epiphanies, so it was really great. After that, we would hang out some more. People would sort of wander off, go to bed. Next morning, you get up, breakfast is made, and coffee's ready, and
gallons of coffee are drunk.
Oh my God, so much,
much coffee.
But it was the same thing, sort of like you're eating. There's multiple tables. People are sitting together, chatting, and some announcements are made about when the vans are leaving on the first trip.
Brandon does the breathing exercises.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So after everybody ate breakfast, Brandon would come down there. Brandon Powell, who was the Wim Hof trainer guy, came down and did these awesome breathing exercises, and so that really set the tone for the whole day. Like filled you up with energy and sort of just put you in I don't know, it was great.
Yeah.
Just like whatever stiffness you had from sleeping, if you had a little headache, whatever. Like I heard this from all these people. Like they had a headache and it went away. This guy was stiff and it went away. Just like energy came up, So Brandon was just like setting the mood for each day, doing a great job with that. Fantastic.
Yep. Every morning.
Yeah.
And he would do it with the djembe drum. Like the drum is going the whole time, like keeping this rhythm, and you're doing this rhythmic breathing.
Yeah.
He's like guiding everybody through the whole thing in this sort of like, I don't know. It's kind of like real tribal sounding.
Yeah,
like
very tribal chanting. So he would do this really cool thing where he would go through like say six cycles of it. Okay. And the first cycle, he's doing a lot of instruction. So he's like telling you what's going on, and then he starts beating on the drum, and he gets you into the rhythm of the breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, using the drum to keep the rhythm. And then at the end of this, he brings you to the climax of that cycle where everybody takes a deep breath and holds it, and then he stops playing the drum, and just everything is silent. Everyone's holding their breath, and everyone's concentrating and focusing with their eyes closed. And then as people begin to let their breaths out or whatever, then he starts it up again. He's like, "Here we go again." He's real quiet. He starts the drum going again, and he works up the speed. Does that like 6 times. By the end, what people know, now that people are familiar with what's going on and they understand how it works, he doesn't have to do any instructions, and he starts to chant.
Yeah.
And it was just so cool. Like his chanting voice was badass. Like he's just playing the drum and singing this like, hey, yep. Just like really awesome. Like I can't do it like he can. And I always wanted to start singing along with him, but of course I'm trying to hold my breath and, do my breathing and stuff. And just like really cool stuff. So Brandon did fantastic. So then, yeah.
Then everybody pile into the vans and then we get to the site and go through this chaotic mess of trying to get everybody signed up for the first tour.
Yeah.
We just, once again, like show up and the park people are just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Show guys again.
We do that whole tour, the Chimney Rock tour, which that didn't take all day.
Yeah. Chimney Rock was like 45 minutes from where we
so
were.
after that, people, you could split off. There were, a lot of people brought cars. Some people were picked up from the airport. So there was the hot springs that we got to go to in Pagosa, and you could do that after Chimney Rock. You had enough time in the day to go visit the hot springs, and they were just amazing. And we went with Brandon Powell again.
And the hot springs had huge sulfur deposits around. I mean, like they really sort of worked it up to where like, it was built up enough to where there were separate pools and the pools were really nice and there were railings and sort of all that shit. But they also left enough of the original volcanic shit where there's these gigantic piles of sulfur and other mineral deposits from the hot springs themselves.
Yeah. And there's, each pool had a kind of a sign that told you what the temperature was. And so
it smelled awful, but it was fantastic.
The day that we went, it was snowing.
Yeah.
And, we're there with Brandon Powell and Randall and Brad, a bunch of other guys.
Cameron from Sacred Geometry International website was there with us, and he loves the Wim Hof stuff too. So.
Yeah, and him and Brandon are good friends. And so they immediately just go get in the river.
Yeah.
The snow.
It's like 42 degrees or something.
I'm like no, there's no freaking way. So I get in this pool, and then I get in a hotter pool, and I finally work my way up to the hottest pool, which is like
the lobster
114 degrees. And then after I get tired of that, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna go get in the river.
Yeah.
I get in there and try to stay in there as long as I can. And Brandon, I'm with Brandon. He's kind of like, helping like guide, here's what you got to do. Here's what you got to do. And then finally get out. Crazy feeling. Like I had to like stabilize myself. I was like, shit,
Yeah, I did it too. I felt the same way. It's like when you just have to go in there and sit down.
Yeah.
And it's freaking cold, and your whole body goes, nope, nope, no. And it starts shutting things down and turning things off and rerouting circuits and all kinds. You can feel it happening. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. I made the mistake of putting my head underwater right at the end without a full breath.
Oh yeah.
And
you're like,
no, it was like
it
an
makes you wanna
immediate inhale.
Yeah.
And I just had to yank my head up out of the water and almost just like inhale the whole breath of water. So I was like, oh. I gave Brandon shit. I was like, dude, how come you didn't tell me not to do that? You're supposed to be my guide, man.
I almost just died.
But I did it a couple of times and built up my tolerance for the cold, and it was amazing feeling, just absolutely amazing. I don't even know how to describe it, but the idea is that the cold is a great anti-inflammatory for the whole body. And I think I felt that. I mean, like Russ was saying, you can literally feel your body doing all of this stuff. And it's like...
Your body goes... You can tell your body goes into, oh shit, I'm about to die mode. Like things... I mean, and I say that in a joking way, but you can literally feel that. Like you sit down and so because of the missing 411 stuff, I studied as best I could the effects of hypothermia. Vasoconstriction, like the muscle jittering, there's a whole set of things that your hypothalamus starts to do when it thinks you're dying of cold. Okay. And sitting down in that really cold water during snowing weather, I was able to feel those things begin. The vasoconstriction, and Brandon's like, and he told us this beforehand. He's like, you can use your mind. The first thing you have to do is not panic.
Oh, dude.
What?
That just reminded me that, like, when you're sitting in there, you're talking about the vasoconstriction. You can feel your body moving the blood, like the warm blood, to your core.
That's right.
And it's like suddenly your extremities start going all cold.
They just start going numb and cold, and it's not necessarily numb from cold. It's more like they're falling asleep.
Yeah. So he's like, take a breath and hold it, but then push. On that breath, right? And so you do it, and you just suddenly feel this warmth going all the way back down your arms and legs into your fingertips and into your toes, and you're just like, oh my God. And it feels hot.
Yeah.
It's like stinging.
Yeah.
And so you do that a couple of times while you're sitting in the cold water, and it's sort of also a focus thing. You breathe for a while, and then you hold your breath and push. It's very similar to the...
Yeah. When you first sit down in the water, your body wants to go... That's the sensation you get.
Convulsions.
Yeah, it wants to go into convulsions. Those are the second stage. Like, so shivering, when you're cold, that's first stage muscular jitters. When you go into like massive cold shock, your body wants to do like skeletal muscle jittering, which is like it's the uncontrollable. Yeah. And because you're not actually dying yet, you can control it for a little while. Eventually, you couldn't control it.
Yeah.
But you can control it, and you do it by taking these enormous breaths. Right. And then holding them, and you take this enormous breath, and you're telling yourself, you're not dying. You're doing this on purpose. Right. So that's another big thing. You have to remind yourself, you have to focus on your body, and you're like, I know it's having these reactions. I know what I'm doing, though, and I'm about to get out of this water in a minute here. I'm not going to die in this. Like, if I had fallen into ice water out in the middle of the lake, it would be totally different. Right. I would probably be freaking out. But you can tell yourself not to panic, and you have to like fight this physical desire of your body to want to start panicking. And all of that stuff, all these things happening very quickly, because as soon as you sit down in the water, it all happens at once, right?
Yeah.
At least that initial stuff. And then things start to shut down, and then you can take the breath, and you can feel the hot blood go back out, and it's crazy hot, tingly. So, and then you get out. You get out, and you're standing there in your shorts and no shirt and it's snowing.
You're wet.
And when you're walking over to get in the cold water, you're like, holy shit, it's cold out here. And now you're like, oh, it feels kind of nice out here. It's not cold at all.
Yeah.
And then you go get in the hot water, and you're like, oh my God. And then you can feel it all turning back on. All those processes shutting down and things being rerouted again. And it's just crazy awesome. It's really cool.
So you got to do that on the first day, and then back to the lodge. Same deal. Everybody's kind of hanging out. Everybody's making dinner for themselves and everything. And then we either jam out, have a big jam session or something, or in one case, Randall gave another presentation on the second night. Actually, in multiple cases, I think he did that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was cool how like Randall would kind of read the group and
decide what to talk about.
Yeah, he would just, based on probably his conversations with everybody and what people were seeming to be most interested in, he would just, you know what, I'm gonna talk about this. You guys seem interested in this.
Yeah.
And so it was really great. Then again, next morning, same routine. We do the breathing exercise, and then it was piling the vans, and this was the all day trip to Mesa Verde.
Yeah, 16-hour
vans.
day.
Just
3 hours there.
And Mesa Verde was cool because there's just like we were saying before, you're just hitting spot after spot after spot. And some of them we'd only spend like 4 or 5 minutes at.
Yeah.
But it was, and then you go to the next one and you spend 4 or 5 minutes there. And then we go to one and spend an hour there. And then we go to another one and spend 5 or 10 minutes and then 20 minutes. And so you got to see more of a bigger scope of just this civilization, what they were doing, and
the geology,
how broad it was, and all the geology and everything.
Yeah.
We'd come home, we'd be driving home at night by that point, stop and eat dinner somewhere with everybody. We'd get back to the lodge and party down.
Right. Yep.
And then the next day,
everyone starts leaving.
All the people from that group would leave, and then the next group would come in, and we'd get to meet all those people and start the whole process over again.
Yeah.
3 times.
3 times.
And it was just, it was awesome. And I can't wait to do it again at a new place. And you guys should really follow us. Check out Grimerica. They're going to be planning another one.
Yep.
And check out their podcast. They're great guys, Darren and Graham.
Yep. Grimerica.ca/support.
Support the show.
Be nice in the chats.
Yeah, so we made some great friendships while we were there, and we're planning to do more of these events with
We're
those
still
guys.
in daily communications with a lot of these people, with the Grimerica guys, with Randall and Rad. I've been talking to Cameron for a long time on Twitter because he's active on Twitter. Brad was awesome. Brad is like he's like the esoteric part of Randall's group. Brad does tons of work around everything that Randall is doing, and he's kind of an unsung hero. So I want to.
Yeah, he's kind of like Randall's watcher.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
He's taking video and doing all this.
And Randall is
planning
constantly
trips with him.
and Randall's constantly asking him questions. So like during Randall's presentations, he's like, "Where was this, Brad? When did we go here?" And Brad's got the information. He's like, "Oh, that was like 2007."
Yeah.
So Brad, just want to give a shout out to him. You guys can follow him on Twitter at Geocosmic Rex and go to his YouTube site where he's got a lot of Randall stuff. He's been going on trips with Randall for 2 decades or so, and I got his life story, and we got his life story and Randall's life story and how they met and all that stuff. And so you guys should go to hear all that stuff, because aside from all the investigation, looking at catastrophic geology, looking at ancient shit, there was also just a great personal connections and just a deeper understanding of these people that we've been following from afar for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It felt really good
yeah.
to get to know them on a personal level, and they're super cool.
Yeah. Randall's giving me shit
Randall loves to give Russ shit.
every day.
I love it. So yeah, thank you guys for putting up with our delays on the podcast. We had a lot going on. We came back with a lot more going on.
Yeah.
So,
And there's still more to come.
yeah.
So, you guys, as you know, can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Also, on the website, brothersoftheserpent.com, you can find the snake skins. Buy some Snake Bros t-shirts.
Yeah, that actually helps you out, keeps you changing your skins, keeps you nice and fresh with a shiny
right.
coat.
Keeps you fresh and
and
fresh.
it supports the show because we get a little cut
Get a
of
little cut from that.
the sales.
That's right. Also, you can comment there, and thanks for everybody who has been commenting. I love the comments. Also, the encyclopedia, which I worked very hard on, and I probably should do some more work on. And the glossary, which has all of the memes of the weird terms that we make up for this show. And you can follow us on Twitter at Snake Bros with no vowels, SNKBRS. Also, new information about Twitter. You can follow the Watcher on Twitter at SnakeBros_Watcher.
Hell yeah. Also, you can share the shows. That would help us out as well if you can't donate to our pyramid scheme. But if you can share the shows and donate to our pyramid scheme, you should do both.
That's right. And you can find the donate button on the website, brothersoftheserpent.com, on the upper right. It's the PayPal button, and you can pay with any method available.
But we very much appreciate everyone who has donated.
That's right.
And we are getting, finally, climate change in the tangent cube. It's
right.
coming.
That's right. Climate change is coming, thanks in part and mostly to you guys. Also, we do have a Patreon. Like I said before, it's sort of in its infancy stages, but it is there. So you can also donate to the Pyramid Scheme through the Patreon if you want to do that. Yeah. Send us pie every month or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I set up in there, but they're all processional numbers. So.
And obviously, reviews help. And thanks everyone who has given reviews, including that one guy. Gave us only 1 star. Thank you.
The beard and low V guy. Yeah, he gave us 1 star. Yep. Also, History Shift. Follow History Shift on Twitter. Find him on his blog, historyshift.blogspot.com, and also his YouTube channel. He has been making all of our YouTube videos. The only reason he's behind right now is because of me, so don't blame him.
That Contact at the Cabin show that we did while we were at Contact at the Cabin has a video of Randall's presentation that he does on Lake Nipigon.
Yeah, we just have to load it all up.
I have the video. It is multiple gigs. We have a bad internet connection. We're figuring it out. We're gonna mail it to him.
Yeah, gonna put it on a jump drive and
get it
mail
on
it to
YouTube.
him. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Thanks for your patience.
Yep. Also, Henry Hablak. You can find him on Instagram at HHablak, HHABLAK. on Instagram. He's the one that sent us all the T-shirts and all the cool swag that we have lying around us in the Tangent Cube.
Yes.
From the
Sam.
one-up box we opened earlier. Also, you can find him hermetica.bigcartel.com. Thanks, Henry, so much. Thanks for all your emails. Thanks for your communications and your support, buddy. Keep posting our shows on your Instagram. That helped a lot. Keep doing it. All right, people.
Thank you.
That was the Contact at the Cabin show. Hope you enjoyed it. Good night, Adamu.
We love
Get
you.
back to work.
Always have.
Yeah, I guess goodbye.
Always will.